the fresh produce ban imports that Botswana has placed on South Africa. By the way, I don't think it's just South Africa. I think Botswana is taking a protectionist view around food security, but very specifically investing in local farmers. Wandile Hlobo believes that there is an alternative way to resolve this, and we're going to be talking about that in this hour. You can be a part of all of these conversations. Just send us a WhatsApp voice note on 0614104107. Call us on 086 000 2032. Please do tweet me. It is at Oliver_speaking on Twitter, Oliver Dixon on Facebook, and you and I can engage on all of those platforms. 9 minutes after 6.
Get ready for a magical night filled with hope and positivity at the Night of Hope event, 25th August, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. live. Join Lotus FM Pastor Niven Lalman for a special 2-hour broadcast of the Gospel Hour live at one of Durban's most prestigious venues, the Durban Christian Center Dome. This will be a historic reach, calling the greater Durban community to come together for a night of prayer and embrace, together with SABC to present live from the venue to a greater South African audience. Tickets are free. Secure your spot by booking online through Cricket today. Don't miss out on this unforgettable, historic night for South Africa. See you there.
SA Women's Struggles Journal. #Women's Month. Celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development, SAfm celebrates the power, resilience and brilliance of women. It's Women's Month, and we honoring the incredible contributions of women in our communities, our workplaces and our homes. Join SAfm in recognizing the achievements, strengths and spirit of women everywhere. Let's uplift and empower each other today and every day. SAfm, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to SAfm Breakfast.
10 minutes after 6 o'clock, let's take a look at your weather this morning. We start with some impact-based warnings. A yellow level 4 warning for damaging winds and waves resulting in disruptions between Plettenberg Bay and East London. A yellow level 2 warning for coastal winds leading to difficulty of navigation between Cape Point and Plettenberg Bay. And a yellow level 2 warning for damaging winds and waves resulting in local disruptions between East London and Nkosi Bay. We've got extreme fire danger warnings this morning for extremely high fire danger conditions expected over the northern parts of Limpopo, and you can expect very cold conditions in the interior of the Eastern Cape. However, in your indicators this morning, Johannesburg is experiencing a high of 20, fine weather to be expected in Johannesburg. Vereeniging will be fine with a high of 25. Mbombela will be reaching a high of 19, will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy in the evening with a light drizzle. And in Polokwane, you can expect fine weather, partly cloudy as well, with a high of 24. In Mahikeng, you can expect a high of 29. And in Bloemfontein, this morning, it's very cold with a low of -1 and a high of 24. Fine weather to be expected in Bloemfontein. Kimberley will be reaching a high of 23. Cape Town will be reaching a high of 21. It will be fine with a light and variable wind. And George will be reaching a high of 16. It will be partly cloudy, becoming fine by the afternoon. And you can expect a light to moderate northerly to northeasterly wind at first, becoming fresh to strong easterly to southeasterly. Gqeberha will be reaching a high of 16. It will be cloudy with scattered showers and rain. And East London will be reaching a high of 17. Also cloudy with isolated showers and rain, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. In Richardsburg, you can expect, in Durban, you can expect a high of 21. Richards Bay, a high of 21. And Pietermaritzburg, a high of 18. All of those areas will be experiencing cloudy weather with isolated showers. And that is your weather.
Our brand new Miss South Africa 2024 is Mia!
Have you not always accepted, or rather have you not always been comfortable with being a beautiful girl? I mean, you are strikingly beautiful. I know it has nothing to do with you. Mom and Dad are listening, so they get all the credits. You are a strikingly beautiful girl.
Thank you so much. I actually, when I grew up, I did experience bullying. I was an emotional eater. I got overweight, so I have not always felt beautiful. I did have a very tough time during school and like primary school with feeling beautiful. Like I felt very unworthy, I felt very ugly. And there is this line that I love that says, I know my worth, because I have felt my unworthiness.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. SAfm has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Daily News Diary on SAfm.
It is exactly 15 minutes after 6 a.m. and Ava Chipa's with us for the Daily News Diary. Ava, good morning. Usually this time of the week, it's a Thursday. You would expect, the news cycle to slow down a little bit. The worst or the most of it would have happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so we can go into a Friday breathing. I'm hoping you're having a breather on the news desk today.
I wish. I really wish, but not today. So I just want to recap from yesterday. So you did ask a question about the Pietermaritzburg Hospital, right? So more details have emerged regarding the explosion. So it occurred when the MRI scanning machine was being decommissioned. So parts of the radiology wing at the hospital have been damaged. So the provincial health department say it was an accidental explosion because when they decommission an MRI machine, it involves releasing pressure from the machine so it can be shut down. So the expelled air caused infrastructure damage, which then led to the explosion and the injuries. However, there are no deaths, but there has been extensive damage. So they're still trying to estimate the cost of the damage and how much it will cost to repair that.
My goodness. That sounds traumatic. But what else do you have on the desk today?
Now, I think you're going to find this interesting. We have a lot of media briefings today. I'm particularly excited for one. I'm so excited. The MK party leader, Jacob Zuma.
Can I just say something? I'm glad you're calling it a media briefing because I take issue with the fact that, and I know they'll get angry and it's fine, I don't care. I take issue with the fact that the MK party puts out a statement and says, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma will be addressing the country. No, you're not addressing the country. You're having a media briefing.
True.
Right? John Steenhuisen did the same, by the way. I don't even remember, right after the election results, they said, leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen will be addressing the country. No, you're having a media briefing. Addressing the country is something that is an official term for the head of state or government, right? You don't address the country as a leader of a random party. I don't know, Bongani Baloyi can't be addressing him, no disrespect to him. And so I'm glad you're calling it a media briefing because that's exactly what it is.
Yes. So he is expected to speak about issues relating to the party. Now, there is speculation that it's also going to unveil Floyd Shivambu and the position that he will be placed in. Now, there's also hope that he will touch on his expulsion from the ANC, because this is after the ANC has confirmed that Zuma missed the deadline to appeal his expulsion from the party. He was given 3 weeks to appeal and he did not. So we'll have to wait and see what happens at this briefing. Now, there's still more other things to look forward to, as the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, will have a media briefing as well on the outcomes of a cabinet meeting which was held yesterday. Now, this afternoon at around 2, Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, together with the head of the SIU, Advocate Andy Mutibi, they briefing the media on the SIU investigation findings into the multi-billion rand medical legal claims. Now, these are claims that are made against departments through litigation for compensation because of a loss that was done by the department, which for me, I found really heartbreaking, because just yesterday we had a story about a woman from Mpumalanga who was blaming one of the local hospitals for the death of her daughter, who died in hospital after a cesarean C-section 4 months ago. So now the family are arguing that they did not give consent for that operation. So as you can see, there's been a lot of medical malpractice litigation against the Departments of Health across the country. So this resulted in the SIU being authorized by President Cyril Ramaphosa to investigate the allegations of corruption, fraud, maladministration, all linked to the public health sector.
Yeah, that is something very important. In fact, when I had interviewed Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, I think a week after he was sworn in as the Minister of Health, one of the things I had spoken to him about was the malpractice and negligence bill of the department, and he said one of his goals is to reduce that significantly because a lot of it is very preventable. So it's exciting to hear about that.
Yeah, and just lastly, there's been 4 schools around Dalportschwip in the Northern Cape that have been closed due to a measles outbreak. So it's been reported that around 130 pupils have been affected, and these kids are mainly in grade 4 and grade 6. So as you know, measles infects the respiratory tract and then spreads throughout the body. So symptoms do include high fever, a cough, a runny nose, and rash all over the body. So no other provinces have confirmed the outbreak, but parents are asked to be vigilant.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Oh yeah, I just remembered something. It's very busy in cabinet, right?
It is.
The Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, he's got a very seemingly important meeting with the Minister of Sports, Gaten McKenzie, today, and they're going to be talking about nation building. I wonder if he's going to scold and chastise him for his communication strategy.
Do you think that will happen, though?
I think so.
I hope so.
Ava, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. 20 minutes after 6.
Feel Good Fridays just got even better with a brand new Espresso newsletter, the Feel Good Fix. Delivered to your inbox every Friday, it is your weekly dose of joy, entertainment, and local flair. Subscribe now at expressoshow.com and never miss a moment.
From heartwarming stories to tasty recipes, it's all there waiting for you. And remember to tune in to the Espresso Morning Show weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on S3, and let's start your day right and channel your inner feel good.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Catch me, Bonang Mateba, on a fresh reality series that showcases the business behind being a business. Get to experience an intimate look at my life with family, personal growth, and my mission to uplift young women. Jet with me as we prepare to crown a lucky chaser. Be grounded, be entertained, and be dazzled. Monday, 6 p.m. on S3 is the date with you and B. Catch Bedazzled by Bonang on S3 every Monday at 6 p.m.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
There have been some very interesting developments between Ukraine and Russia in their ongoing war. And I'm saying interesting developments because it seems like there's a change of strategy by Ukraine in how they're approaching this war. It seems like they've gone from a defensive approach to an offensive approach. They've made some headway across the Russian border. In fact, executing, at least according to Russian sources, a drone strike in Moscow. Now, this is something Ukraine previously didn't do and wouldn't want to do because they were resource strapped, right? But why is that changing? I don't know, but Roland Henwood may be able to make sense of it. He's a political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. Roland, good morning. Thank you so much for it. Really do appreciate it. Does this change in strategy strike you curious?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Actually, it's not really a change in strategy in the sense that it's new, but it's a broadening of the strategy. What it indicates is that the Ukrainian forces are under real pressure. They remain under real pressure in Ukraine itself, and there's very little opportunity for movement. There's a mostly stagnant front line that the forces are fighting along, And then there's some movement in the southern parts where the Russian forces are steadily making progress, very slowly, but making progress in extending the areas they control. And what Ukraine has done is change the dynamics by launching an incursion into Russia, which has now become a much bigger military advance, and they're controlling not a big part of Russia, but in the context of the geography of the war, they're controlling a fairly substantial part of Russian territory. They seem to be in full control of that. And that's putting Russia under pressure, because they have to now divert their attention, they have to divert resources, they have to divert military units to defend the area. They haven't started to fight back in the sense of pushing Ukraine out, but they're also now defending. Yeah. And I think in line with this is broadening the scope of the operations and launching more drone attacks. It's not a new strategy. They have done it before. They also launched a fairly big attack against Moscow in November 23, when they launched 20 drones. Now, 20 drones is not that much, but it had a significant impact. Same now, it's not something that's done every day, but the fact that it happened, shut down 3 major airports for some hours, led to some actions being taken on the Russian side that impacts the civilian population. Of course, that creates a sense of insecurity, and it puts pressure on the Russian population, the Russian government, and in that way it brings, as the Ukrainians say, it brings the war home to Moscow to see what's happening.
Yeah. This means that Russia now has to ask themselves the question, is this worthwhile continuing? Because they're on the back foot now. It seems like Russia's running out of resources, and Ukraine seems to be having their resources replenished. This comes down to who can withstand the other the longest. What's your view on that?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, in the sense that both sides have so far been fairly successful in maintaining themselves. Ukraine has gone through a bad patch in the first half of 2024 with lack of sufficient resources, the timing of resources being delivered, but that seems to have been resolved, and that has to do more with domestic politics in the US than what has happened in Ukraine itself. But it shows the dependency of Ukraine on the supplies from Western Europe and North America. Russia had similar challenges, seems to have resolved that to some extent by getting new equipment or replenishments from North Korea and Iran especially. So on that sense, the war is continuing, but the changes now is, where do you defend, where do you attack, where do you move your forces, and then a definite change in Ukraine is striking deeper into Russia, attacking Russian energy and energy supply stores, because that is going to have an effect on the war effort as well as on the domestic economy, and it's going to have an effect on the Russian population. So it's a question of developing and applying pressure and seeing if you can drive concessions in that way. One of the interpretations of what Ukraine is doing is try and force some development in the direction of negotiations. If that is going to be successful is open to question.
Yeah. Another thing that perhaps will play a big role here is that of Russian citizens at the moment. What Ukraine is doing here, and what we've seen in reports, is that they're targeting very specifically Russian infrastructure, like bridges and certain key infrastructure points. Now, that inconveniences Russian citizens in ways that it maybe previously didn't. They then start having questions about this war. They then start having frustrations about it. In what way could that potentially impact Putin's popularity and his own appetite for continuing this war?
Well, it's definitely going to have an effect in the sense that, as I said earlier, the idea is you bringing the home war to Russia so people can see and feel the direct effects of war. It will create pressure. If it's going to create the kind of pressure that weaken Mr. Putin, that is something that is open to discuss. It's never clear if what's going to happen in that sense, but that it's going to change the dynamics is for sure, and that is going to lead to questions being asked in Russia is also for sure. The issue is you're not just causing inconvenience, you are causing deaths. You are making it impossible for people to leave certain areas if the bridges are destroyed. So in essence, what you're doing is creating a situation where extreme measures are necessary. You can't just go on about talking about things. You have to do things very differently. And it's affecting people in a material way, quality of life, a direct sense of insecurity, and then of course the destruction of infrastructure, very visible. You can't hide that, you can't talk that away. And that definitely has an impact on the mindset of people and also the attitudes of people.
Yeah, and just maybe lastly to explore here is Putin's own geopolitical not realignment per se, but imposition. He's had high-level meetings in recent months. One with Xi Jinping, which was very monumental, and one with the North Korean president or the North Korean emperor, Kim Jong-un. And these meetings were on bilateral agreements around defense and defense support. Now that Russia's on the back foot, and Russia still holds the position that this is a NATO proxy war, can we expect Russia to make those phone calls back to North Korea and China and say, hey guys, I actually need your help now?
Well, probably that is happening, although it's not clear that China is in any way directly assisting Russia in the war effort. They're too careful for that. And there's a lot of questions being asked about indirect support and assistance, and there's some pressure and some sensitivity to that also in Beijing. So this is a continuing process. But there are also other unfolding dynamics. The Indian Prime Minister will be in Eastern Europe today and tomorrow. Tomorrow he will meet with President Zelensky. He had a meeting with Mr. Putin earlier in the year. And that's part of this continuing process of leaders engaging, especially those who are engaging both sides, in trying to get the dynamic going for some movement towards a resolution of the conflict. Because one mistake one must not make is this conflict is not only affecting people in the immediate geographical context. It has an impact on the rest of the world. It had major economic consequences, and the tensions, the destabilization, and the division it creates is not good for anyone. So the sooner this can be ended, the better.
Yep, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you so much for your insights, Roland. Really do appreciate it. It is 6:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
In your news making headlines for this hour, the MK party leader Jacob Zuma will today brief the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. The former EFF members Floyd Shivambu and Mzwanele Manyi are expected to be present. Meanwhile, the 10 people that have been expelled from the MK party will be back in the Western Cape High Court on the 3rd of next month. The 10 who were in court yesterday have also been dismissed from their positions as members of parliament. And lastly, the Deputy Defence Minister Bantu Holomisa says he has met with the Police Ministers Henzo Mchunu and the Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane to discuss the escalation of extortion in the province. It is alleged that extortion syndicates in the Eastern Cape are demanding protection fees from businesses, schools and healthcare facilities. I'll be back at 7 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just confirming a crash sheet on Pretoria's Mopani Highway this morning. It said Block XX is a really big backlog of early morning traffic stuck coming out of Shoshanguve. The Hebron Road backing up to get onto the R80 and into that queue as well. If you know the M35, the Sopan Road, that'll bring you in through Ondustaport from Shosha. That's probably the route to do this morning. There's also been a crash in Pretoria. It happens regularly this time of morning. It's the M1 South at the R21. So backlogging through to Rigel already. Truck crash between Swinburne and Funrinan Village. Expect some delays on the Durban-bound carriageway. It may just be knocking onto the northbound track as well there. Broken down vehicle near Market Road in the roadworks coming out of Pietermaritzburg to Durban. That's heavy today. And Cape Town, the N2 inbound. No obstruction that we can see, but there's some heavy traffic from the airport all the way through towards the Rapenburg Road exit. The N1 looking fairly heavy with queues from Plattekloof through to Kuburg at a change already. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Sai Khan.
A very good morning to you. Let's start with cricket. Proteas all-rounder Vian Mulder has made a significant leap in the ICC bowling rankings, rising 27 places to 65 after an impressive performance against the West Indies. His 6-wicket haul helped South Africa secure a series win. Meanwhile, West Indies' Jayden Seales has reached a career best 13th place on the rankings after finishing as the top bowler in the series. On the batting side, Aiden Markram and Kyle Verreynne have also moved up in the rankings after solid half-centuries. South Africa currently hold 5th position in the ICC World Test Championship standings with a win percentage of 38.89%. Soccer news, former Bafana and Mamelodi Sundowns striker Cassius Mailula has reunited with Rulani Mokoena at Wydad Athletic Club in Morocco. Wydad announced Mailula has joined the Moroccan Giants, who are now coached by Mokoena after his abrupt departure from Sundowns last month. Elsewhere, Germany goalkeeper Manuel Neuer has announced his retirement from international football. The 2014 World Cup winner was capped 124 times, with his final game for Germany coming last month in their Euro 2024 quarter-final defeat by Spain. Golf, Tristan Lawrence and Jacques Blau both fired outstandings 10 under par 62s to share the lead in a meeting of two of South African golf's most informed stars in the first round of the Sunbet Challenge Times Square Casino at Wingate Park Country Club. Lawrence, who is currently 6th on the DP World Tour's race to Dubai, is back in South Africa to complete his rehabilitation from a back injury he suffered after the Open Championship a month ago. Motorsport, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, Peter Bonington, has been given a promotion at Mercedes and will not join the 7-time world champion at Ferrari. Bonington, also known as Bono, has moved up to head of race engineering, but will remain as Hamilton's race engineer for the remainder of the season. And finally, tennis. Jannik Sinner has been worn down physically and mentally by the investigation into his positive tests for a banned substance, according to his coach Darren Cahill. The Italian twice tested positive in March for clostebol, a steroid that can be used to build muscle mass, but he was cleared of fault or negligence by an independent tribunal. The International Tennis Integrity Agency found Sinner was inadvertently contaminated with the substance by Giacomo Naldi, his physiotherapist. Now, since first alerted about the doping violations in early April, Sinner has won tournaments in Hull and Cincinnati and became world number 1 for the first time in his career. More sport, top of the hour for SAfm Breakfast. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAfm.
35 minutes after 6 o'clock, 25 minutes to the top of the hour. This is the Business Update here on SAfm. And of course, by the way, in the final hour, we're going to be bringing you a very important business-related story. Not in the final hour, in the second hour, my apologies. And that is on inflation. We're going to be evaluating the impact of what was announced yesterday in a downturn in inflation. Ntauling is standing by with the Business Update.
It's the most spectacular time to save with the best of everything beauty at Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair. Join us for our iconic 25% off fragrance extravaganza. That's 20% off plus an extra 5% discount for benefit card holders on all fragrance brands such as Zoe, Hugo Boss, Jimmy Choo, Mugler and more. Now on for 2 days, 31 August and 1st September. An extra day of discounts for you in store and online. Only at Dis-Chem, better beauty starts here.
The clock is ticking fast as we approach the celebration of Sport Queens in Mzansi, Africa, honoring the passion, courage, and excellence of women in sport. Experience the G Sport Awards 2024 finalist announcement this Thursday, 22 August at 12 midday, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Feel like you're paying too much for your car insurance? Be like 43-year-old Anissa, who pays only 1,289 Rand per month to insure her silver 2019 Toyota Hilux Raider e-cab without insurance. Get a quote from Outsurance today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 now. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
The Business Update on SAfm.
It's 23 minutes to the top of the hour when Darling is here with the Business Update. We start with company's news this morning. High gold prices work in DRD's gold favor. And Darling, tell us about that.
Morning, Oliver. So gold really holding steady when compared to other metals. Since the beginning of the year, the price for the yellow metal has increased over 21%. A number of factors have been influencing demand, including prospects of interest rate cuts, economic uncertainty, and geopolitical tensions. That increasing demand, of course, and price boost gold miners. This has translated to a 14% jump in revenue and a 4% rise in earnings for DRD Gold. Now, while the higher gold price boosted DRD Gold's financial performance, the group underperformed operationally. During the annual period, gold production fell 5%. Most of the operational losses came from one of its subsidiaries, Ergo, where gold output declined 7%. The decline in production was due to the late commissioning of 2 mining sites and anticipated design amendments by the Water and Sanitation Department and community-related disruptions. Now, this also led to a rise in costs, with its all-in sustaining costs increasing 14%. Despite the challenges, though, DRD is positive that it will deliver on its full-year production goals, saying these are just once-off issues.
And Malaria and Roberts, they're getting into the nuts and bolts of renewable energy. They're building a solar power plant.
That's right. Now, the engineering and contracting group, not revealing much about the deal, but what we do know is that it's worth 1.2 billion rand, and the plant is for a mining consortium, and it will be built in the northwest. The group said the contract was awarded through one of its units, OptiPower Projects, and this is in partnership with a Spanish company, Cox Energy. OptiPower will own 50% of the joint venture. This a welcome move for Marian Roberts, considering that it's been in a transition process where it sold off its Australian subsidiaries to focus on being an engineering and contracting services company focused on the African and America's underground mining markets and renewable energy and power infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa. Currently, the group's mining business is driving revenue and earnings growth. OptiPower's right behind being responsible for the group's growing order book.
Yeah, we can already exclude a certain one because they announced their own renewable deal with a French renewable company. And so we can start playing exclusion there. Let's take a look at your indicators. How did the markets close yesterday?
So markets are back in positive territory after yesterday's Fed minutes for the July meeting reinforced hope for lower rates come next month. This saw U.S. stocks close in the green, with the Nasdaq leading those gains. The upbeat mood filtering through to Asia, with most stocks in positive territory. China, however, still lagging in that region. Back at home, sentiment quite positive, with most indices rising by the end of yesterday's trading session. The JSE benefiting from slowing local inflation and heightened Fed rate cut bets. This saw the all-share close 0.87% higher. The rand, in the meantime, losing some of its gains, trading close to 17.19 to the dollar from about 17.81 yesterday evening.
And darling, thank you so much for that. Catching up with you in the second hour. It's 19 minutes to the top of the hour.
SA Women Struggles Journal. Hashtag Women's Month. Celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development. SAfm celebrates the power, resilience and brilliance of women. It's Women's Month, and we honoring the incredible contributions of women in our communities, our workplaces and our homes. Join SAfm in recognizing the achievements, strengths and spirit of women everywhere. Let's uplift and empower each other today and every day. SAfm, leading the conversations that move us. SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide.
18 minutes to the top of the hour. Earlier in the week, we brought you that story about Botswana expanding their ban on South African fresh produce, this very specifically imposing a 3-month ban on citrus. This is not new. Namibia has an ongoing ban on certain South African fresh produce, so does Botswana. In fact, the Namibia one is expiring next year, having started in 2021. All three of these countries, by the way, are members of the Southern African Customs Union. Wandile Sihlobo, agricultural economist, joins us to make sense of this. Wandile, is this against the spirit of the SACU agreement?
Absolutely, because the thinking around the SACU is really beyond the political alignment, more on the economic integration side. And I think what the colleagues are doing, both legally, there's an argument that they may be wrong, but also economically, it's against that spirit of the agreement. And I guess they can make the case about South Africa's dominance in the region, which is why I think perhaps maybe a better communication about what they wanted to achieve on their side, as well as a better calibration and coordination of policy, would have been something that is useful rather than seeing a press statement detailing that X products is being banned from a certain country. So all of these in Botswana and Namibia have been super unhelpful so far.
Yeah. What are the dispute resolution mechanisms in the SACU agreement?
Within the SACU agreement, I mean, what we need now to happen is that the agricultural ministers of South Africa, as well as some of the SACU countries, I think they have to sit down and work through the current dispute that is there. Because remember, when you are either having this trade agreement or you are having a customs, part of the customs union, if there were dumping, there will be all kinds of remedies that are there. Either it's anti-dumping duties and all kinds of things that you use typically on trade. But this has nothing to do with the dumping, because if you look at the prices at which the products get sold in these markets compared with what's happening in South Africa, it gets to be fairly on a competitive basis. What is literally happening in these countries is them saying, we don't want this product in here and we want to boost our domestic product. And there are consequences that we're beginning to see now. If you talk, for example, to people in Botswana, the inflationary aspects are there. People are complaining about the high quality product that is no longer available for them to be able to sell both on the streets and also on the supermarket side. But on South Africa as well, there are certain value chains at which people have calibrated so that they produced in volume for the entire region. So there are all of these aspects that are there. But I think the solution has to be political on this.
There's a more rudimentary question to be asked, and here I want to take you back to your undergraduate ethics classes, because this question is less about agriculture, but more a philosophical question that these countries are putting to the fore. And that is the normative question on whether or not countries should pursue an opportunity to become food independent, but also to secure their own food sovereignty, because that's what Botswana says they're trying to establish by boosting local farmers and giving them market space and access to markets in ways that they don't have to compete with behemoths in South Africa. They're securing, as a country, their own food security. That's not an agricultural argument. That is a political argument. How do we rationalize that?
I mean, absolutely, which again links to my previous point to say the key issue that we are dealing with here is a political ambition of Botswana wanting to take the matters wherever they are willing to take them. But there are two realities at hand here. One is that Botswana doesn't have a better climate to actually be able to produce at scale, at volume, all of what they will need to achieve this food security that they want domestically and be self-sufficient. The second aspect of it, you can be able to improve your domestic production, which is where I was saying a calibration of policy, where you can tell South Africa to say, look guys, as an example, you are producing carrots all year round. And here we want to have a certain bit that we can produce for ourselves. So in particular months, we would like to actually see relatively lesser imports that are coming from your side. And then we can be able to open up a space for the domestic market. Something like that would work. Because remember, the fact that now you get to length of saying you are blocking all of imports, it tells us something also about the competitiveness of your own industry, because then it means that you cannot compete with what's coming up here, because South Africa is not taking this to dump in Botswana. But the point is taken that each country, especially right now, there is a sense of trade fragmentation and everyone is looking inwards. But I think a better coordination of what Botswana is attempting to do will perhaps maybe be useful, even in terms of planning and thinking about the regional value chain and the regional agricultural progress.
Well, what is the downside here for South Africa? Because Botswana and Namibia are both relatively small markets compared to the rest of the continent and the rest of the world that that farmers could divert their produce to. Why are South African farmers lamenting this?
I mean, look, you have to see this thing in two aspects. That it is a beginning of something that may get out of hand if we are unable to resolve this. So I'll give you this. If you look at South African agricultural sector today, we export roughly half of what we produce. Last year, that was about $13.2 billion. And you ask a question of saying, where are these exports going? 40% of them are going to the African continent. And in that 40% that go to the African continent, 90 cents in every R1 goes to the SADC region. Now, if things like this happen and they continue to creep up, they involve many products, it has a consequential disruption on the South African side. That's the one part of it. This other aspect of it is also then about us now who are sitting in the policy space, thinking about the food security dimensions of the region, and secondly, even about the better coordination. If we have aspiration of developing regional value chains, that's something that could be on the table, and then all of us could look at our comparative advantages as these countries, and then deliberately decide that, okay, you can do more of A, B, C. Not that that's something that we should be doing, but we can explore conversations like that and have incentives in place, and then we can develop the Southern Africa agricultural systems where we're able then to take stuff out to the world. So I think the friction also comes in those aspects to South Africa.
From what you've seen and heard from John Steenhuisen, the Minister of Agriculture, does he have the right conceptual framework in resolving this?
Minister Steenhuisen has a deeper appreciation of what's happening on this aspect, and of course he will need two of his colleagues in one way or another, Minister Lamola as well as Minister Tau at the TTIC, and I think all of them have a greater appreciation of what's happening here. And I think the most important thing is for South Africa to react responsibly and sensitively, knowing that we are a small economy in this region. I've heard people saying, okay, why don't you just retaliate and do ABC? We cannot do that. I do think that we must be responsible. But there's one point here that is super important that I want to stress, which is that while South Africa, we're talking now as if we want to go and give people our own products, we must remember that within the SACU, there's also something called the SACU revenue sharing formula, which is that in everything that we do, and trade and tariffs and all kinds of things we do as a customs union, there's a lot of money that South Africa actually pays to some of these countries annually. And I don't think that the governments of these countries actually are as transparent with their own citizens about how much money they also get out of South Africa, because there is a sense now of portraying South Africa as a bully to a certain extent, at least if what I'm reading online
but
about this aspect is correct.
Isn't that profit sharing, just lastly, in 30 seconds, if you have an answer to this, isn't that profit sharing very specifically only on revenues generated through port customs duties, right? That is because countries like Swaziland, Lesotho and Botswana make use of South African ports.
It is on that, but you have to ask the question then of saying, is it fairly shared? And I think that's the discussion that you must have with someone from DTIC, Stephen Hannibal, their chief economist, or someone.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Wandile Sihlobo giving us a sense of appreciation on the dynamics at play. We're going to take your traffic. On the other side of that, we speak about that evacuation that's happened at the SAPS facility.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Top story, the crashing on the R80, the Mopani Highway. It's a big enough it's a big enough deal, if you like, to be causing delays coming out of Shoshinguve, but also inbound as well. So the crash is on the outbound, but such is the volume that comes out of there. The two-lane Mopani Highway very quickly becomes 5 or 6 lanes. So it looks like you've probably got oncoming traffic if you're driving north in towards Shoshinguve. So avoid all of that chaos. Take the M35, the Soutpan Road links you from Shosha down through Ondas, the port, and it's flowing nicely on that particular option. Sifaka Makato out of Montana towards the M1 highway. There's a big delay. Joburg's N3 all of a sudden grinds to a halt around Lynbro Park, around the Marlborough Drive exit. If you're on your way from Buccleuch, heading down towards Giluli's interchange, if you like. Looks like something's just happened there. Must be fresh. It's only just happened. If you're coming out of Pietermaritzburg towards Durban, there's quite a big backlog on the N3. A breakdown near New England Road, and then you've got another breakdown by the looks of things in the roadworks just past Market Road. So that queue back towards Ortman Road, that's very heavy. A lot of truck and vehicular traffic caught on the N3 eastbound in that Pietermaritzburg side. Cape Town, the breakdown at Hospital Bend on the N2 basically out of the way, but there's queues right back towards Robert Sobukwe this morning on that N2 option. And just busy out of Mitchell's Plain, you've got roadworks on AZ Berman, you've got some big traffic on the R300 M7 junction and Velta-Vreden Road that takes you up towards sort of M7 Dana-Fontaine Road. That's quite heavy as well. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Feel Good Fridays just got even better with a brand new Espresso newsletter, the Feel Good Fix. Delivered to your inbox every Friday, it is your weekly dose of joy, entertainment, and local flair. Subscribe now at expressoshow.com and never miss a moment.
From heartwarming stories to tasty recipes, it's all there waiting for you. And remember to tune in to the Espresso Morning Show weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on S3, and let's start your day right and channel your inner feel good.
Every day, our children are exposed to relentless marketing of unhealthy foods where they live, learn, and play. This aggressive marketing of unhealthy foods to children can shape their eating habits and food preferences for the rest of their lives. I'm your host, Crystal Audison. Is big food stalking our children? Watch Chew on This on healer.org on Thursday, 15th August at 3 p.m.
Borussia Dortmund understands the delight that comes with triumphing the opening clash of the league race. But Eintracht Frankfurt are not about dropping points this early. They want to complete their visit to Signal Iduna Park with 3 incredible points. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the hot contest between Borussia Dortmund and Eintracht Frankfurt on Saturday, 24 August at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to SAfm Breakfast.
5 minutes to the top of the hour. There's been a gas pipeline explosion at the SEPS Tshwane Training Academy, and 2,500 police trainees had been evacuated. Brigadier Athlenda Mate, who is the national spokesperson for SEPS, joins us to give us some more details on this. Brigadier, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. What do we know about this gas explosion, and how much damage to infrastructure has it caused? Were any of the trainees and staff hurt in the process?
Well, Eric, good morning to you and to your listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me just clarify something. The gas pipeline explosion did not take place at the Tshwane Academy itself. It took place at an adjacent business site at a Sasol plant, which is about 300 meters from the SAPS Academy training site. So what we did is that when we noticed that there was a fire and what was happening, we immediately mobilized all resources, but most importantly, we had to evacuate the 2,500 police trainees that are currently undergoing their 9-month basic training program, but also trainers that are working at the training academy, as well as the other specialized units that are housed at the Tshwane Academy. But I can confirm to you that our quick response, prompt response by all government resources, including the emergency services, they managed to contain the fire and distinguish it. So by 6 o'clock, the fire was distinguished, but at that time, we had already evacuated everyone from the training academy.
Do you have a sense of when they will be returning to the facility?
I can confirm to you that as soon as we received the safety notice from the safety officer, the trainees were all escorted back to the training academy. We had received notice that it is now safe and clear for workers, trainers, as well as our trainees to go back. So I can confirm to you that this morning training will resume. It's business as usual at the SAPS Training Academy, and we will be cooperating with all stakeholders involved. There is an investigation on what actually caused this fire, but what we know is that SASOL employees were on site, there are safety officers and so on. So we are working closely to determine what led to the fire. But it was quite important that we act promptly. Remember, we've had incidents of the Boksburg explosion that led to 41 people dying. So our focus there, and the National Commissioner's focus there in evacuating the students, was to ensure that we preserve life, because we did not know how, at that time, how long this gas pipeline was, and what would happen. So our first focus was just to remove people out of the academy.
And just lastly, you said that there were other specialized units also at the facility where the academy is. Which specialized units are those?
So the Tshwane Academy houses our air wing, our Pretoria air wing. We've also got our special task force that is there. We've also got our Nat Joints Coordination Center, which houses various government departments. You'll know that the Nat Joints is responsible for coordinating all government's response to disasters, to emerging crime challenges and so on. So there is a number of specialized units that are housed at the Tshwane Academy, and that's why the prompt response to say, let us preserve life, let's rather be safe than sorry.
Ahlena Mate, thank you so much for your time this morning, Brigadier. Really do appreciate it. I'm taking your reactions to these conversations on 0614-104-107. I'd like to hear what you think of my conversation earlier on with Wanlesi Hlobo, and that is about the ongoing trade dispute following the bans of fresh produce imports by Botswana on South Africa and Namibia on South Africa. Of course, John Sinezon is going to have to resolve that through ongoing negotiations. Give us a call and reaction to that on 0614-104-107 is our WhatsApp line, and call us at on 086-000-2032. Tweet me at Oliver_speaking on Twitter and Oliver Dixon on Facebook. But before we head out to the news, I just want to tell you, in the next hour, I'm going to be in conversation with Herman Mashaba, who is the leader of Action SA, and we're going to be talking about the recent changes that has taken place in the Gauteng province. They're now setting their eyes on the city of Tshwane. Silliesbrink might be facing a vote of no confidence in the city of Tshwane. But yeah, that's all dependent on what they decide in their negotiation meetings. It's 7 o'clock. Let's take your latest news bulletin.
Top stories for this hour. Zuma to hold a media briefing today, and Tim Walz accepts the nomination to be the next US Vice President. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The MK party leader Jacob Zuma will today brief the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. The former EFF members Floyd Shivambu and Mzwanele Manyi are expected to be present. Meanwhile, the ANC acting spokesperson Zuko Kodlimpi has confirmed that Zuma, the former party president, has missed the deadline to appeal his expulsion from the ANC. The party expelled Zuma last month after the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee found him guilty of prejudicing the integrity of the party following his decision to join the MK party. The committee gave Zuma 3 weeks in which to appeal the decision, but he has not done so. The 10 people that have been expelled from the MK party will be back in the Western Cape High Court on the 3rd of next month. The 10 who were in court yesterday have also been dismissed from their positions as members of parliament. They have approached the court to seek reinstatement. One of them, the party's former student command leader, Tami Kuzwayo, says the decision to take the MK party to court is not a fight against the party leader Jacob Zuma. Kuzwayo says he felt ambushed following the news that he had resigned from the party and parliament.
It came as a very huge ambush to all of us because we did not receive any communication from the party itself or even from the chief whip. We only received letters from Parliament to say that our membership has been terminated. So that is why we're in court today. I need to clarify the fact that we're not fighting against the President Jacob Zuma. We joined this MK party because we believe in President Jacob Zuma's vision for this country. The fight is with the people who committed fraud, who created and fraudulently signed resignation letters on our behalf, and also say that we have been expelled and we received expulsion letters, which is something that we never did.
The Deputy Defence Minister, Bantu Holomisa, says he has met with the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, and the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, to discuss escalation of extortion in the province. It is alleged that extortion syndicates in the Eastern Cape are demanding protection fees from businesses, schools, and healthcare facilities. Mabuyane told ministers in the security cluster the situation was getting out of hand, particularly on the Wild Coast, which has major construction projects. Holomisa says the call for the deployment of the SANDF is premature, but should there be a need, they are ready.
The Premier is of the view that the military must be involved. Yesterday, the police department has released a statement to the effect that they are deploying detectives and police in the Eastern Cape, and we're hoping that after they have satisfied themselves and gathered enough intelligence, they can approach the president. It's only the president who can instruct soldiers. So if we are called upon to assist the police, the SANDF is ready anytime.
In other news, the SABC says it cannot afford to make necessary investments because its funding model is not suitable. Sustainable, rather. Its top management appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies yesterday. The SABC bill is currently before the committee, in which suggestions are being made about the public broadcaster's funding model. Group CEO of the SABC, Nomsa Chabedi, explains the impact of not investing in technology.
Our assets, especially our technology, has reached end of life from an SABC perspective. So we sit there thinking at any minute now, you might have black on air. We found ways to deal with it, but it's something very important. And the last time we really had proper capex investment, ladies and gentlemen, was for the 2010 World Cup.
And lastly, looking further afield, Tim Walz has accepted the Democratic Party's nomination to be the next U.S. Vice President. The governor of Minnesota, who is now the running mate of the current Vice President Kamala Harris, was the headliner on the third day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States. We're all here tonight for one beautiful, simple reason. We love this country. So thank you to all of you here in Chicago and all of you watching at home tonight. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your determination. And most of all, thank you for bringing the joy to this fight.
Recapping the top story at 7, the MK party leader Jacob Zuma will today brief the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. The former EFF members Floyd Shivambu and Mzwanele Manyi are expected to be present. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy backlog this morning out of Pietermaritzburg. There's a couple of breakdowns and the roadworks. A breakdown near New England, a breakdown near Market Road, and then you're into the sort of new right lane closure on your way to Ashburn. So it's a queue that extends right back through to Ortman Road and looks particularly heavily backed up. The Mopani Highway leaving Shoshanguve, a crash there at XX still causing delays. Sefaka Makata coming out of Pretoria's Montana is heavy this morning. Protesting on Alex London Road in the Alexandra area. So just expect a road closure and some delays around that one. And Cape Town, the N5 is fairly heavy this morning. Queues and busy traffic from Ottery all the way through to the N1 Kuberg interchange. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SAfm Sports headlines, it's cricket action. The Proteas will face the West Indies in a T20 series with a fresh squad and high hopes. We'll hear from coach Rob Walter. And in cycling, the Czech rider Pavel Bittner has beaten Wout van Aert in a photo finish to win stage 5 of the Vuelta a España in Seville. All this and more at around 7:30.
Getting ahead of the morning with hashtag SAfm Breakfast.
It is just a touch, 7 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to SAfm Breakfast. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. If you're wondering what's going on with my voice, I am coming down with a terrible flu and it has affected my voice. And yeah, sounding terrible. I do apologize, but I'll try my best to be as clear as possible, as I will try to enunciate every word with more deliberateness than I usually do, because my voice isn't sounding too great. If you get a chance, please do get a flu shot. It's flu season, and I'm just unfortunate that I'm now coming down with the flu, but I do have a cup of tea in front of me, some rooibos tea, some ginger tea, and chamomile tea. All three of those teas apparently have anti-inflammatory properties, so I'm hoping that gets me through the show today. But coming up on this show in this hour, domestic workers in South Africa are still earning well below the national minimum wage, despite the fact that the national minimum wage is legislated, and despite the fact that they have received a 14% increase, domestic workers that is, on the national minimum wage, very specifically for domestic workers. We're going to be speaking about that in this hour. Herman Mashaba is going to join us and take us into the heart of the Action SA's new political direction. They've now coalesced with the ANC in the city of Johannesburg. The city of Johannesburg now has a new speaker who's from the benches of Action SA. They're going to attempt to do the same in Ekurhuleni. And it seems like they are trying to do the same in the city of Tshwane. We're going to be talking about that in a short while. And inflation in South Africa, 4.6%, much better performance than the projected 4.8%. Does this mean that we're getting breathing space? In fact, what has driven this is lower food prices as well as lower transportation prices. And importantly, does that mean we'll see a reduction in the interest rate when the SARB announces the interest rate changes next month? All of that and more coming up on the show in this hour. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. Tweet me. It is at Oliver_speaking on Twitter, Oliver Dixon on Facebook. It's just about 9 minutes after 7.
Upgrade your TV game with the SABC TV license rewards. It's your golden ticket to VIP treatment. Imagine signing up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za, racing through a few steps, and bam! Instant reward, just for being you. Plus, pocket up to 500 Rand back. That's the cherry on top. But wait, it's not just about the cash. We're talking about sweet deals and epic rewards. Think discounts on all your favorite things, from shopping to travel and entertainment. Your payment unlocks a world of fun. So, why wait? Dive into the excitement. Join the SABC's TV license rewards at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. Hit those buttons and watch your TV experience level up. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments, they make a difference. The clock is ticking fast as we approach the celebration of Sport Queens in Mzansi, Africa. Honoring the passion, courage, and excellence of women in sport. Experience the G Sport Awards 2024 finalist announcement this Thursday, 22 August at 12 midday. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAfm, let's talk.
10 minutes after 7 o'clock, South Africa's consumer price index has slowed down to it's the lowest point it's been in the last couple of years. In fact, in the last 4.5 years, with food inflation very specifically sitting at its lowest point in the last 5 years at 3.9%. Does this seal the case for the South African Reserve Bank to lower the interest rate, because it's now well within their targeted range of 3 to 6% year on year? Joining me to make sense of this is economist Professor Raymond Parsons. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for this. Really do appreciate it. Is it external factors or internal factors, or a combination of the two, that has driven a lower inflation and slow inflation rate?
Well, good morning to you. Well, it's a combination, of course, of external and internal factors, but it does add up to quite good news for consumers and for the business community, because as you've indicated, it's the lowest rate of inflation in several years. And also, it's much better than the forecasts that were made as to where we might be. So what we're really seeing here is a gradual winding down of the rate of inflation. I must emphasize it's the rate of inflation, not inflation in itself, that is beginning to come closer to the midpoint of the Reserve Bank's inflation target range of 4.5%. So at 4.6 and 4.3 respectively for the headline inflation and for the core inflation, it looks like while we're not quite there yet, we are much closer towards a low and a stable rate of inflation within the Reserve Bank's target range.
Yeah, the Reserve Bank usually has a very cautiously optimistic view on inflation, and the Monetary Policy Committee, and I mean, one or two members have changed over the last a year or so, but they are usually very, very conservative in their approach to the change of the interest rate. What do you expect them to do this time around?
Well, I think that the common thread with all their decisions is that it is data driven. We all look at the data and we draw certain conclusions, and it's clear that the latest inflation data is setting the table for an initial cut in interest rates when the Reserve Bank meets again next month. Remember that at the last meeting there was already a minority view on the Monetary Policy Committee that there should have been a cut then of about 25 basis points. So clearly it was the majority view, let's get a little more data, let's get a little more confidence about the inflation trends. Well, I think we now have that data, so it looks as if it will be very difficult for the Monetary Policy Committee not to now recognize the shift in the data and begin to cut interest rates. Remember, it'll only be a modest, probably 25 basis points. It's not a silver bullet, but it does tell consumers and business that we are now moving into an interest rate reduction cycle, and that's good news.
Yeah, just lastly, and perhaps additional good news, and I want you to just give us a sense of the impact it would have, is that we will see over the fourth quarter of 2024 some economic stimulus with more money circulating in the economy, given the operationalization of the two-part system. A lot of economists are predicting 30 billion rand at the low end, 70 billion rand at the high end estimation of cash into the economy, into the hands of consumers. What impact would that have on inflation? Because inflation at its core is about the regulation and measurement and the density of money in circulation in the economy.
I don't think we must see that as a disturbing factor to our forecasts. This is a structural change, and what is more, it's not quite clear, even from the research that has been done so far, will consumers run out and spend, or will they simply run down their debt? Will they repay debt? So I think you could just as well get an increase in savings as you might get an increase in spending. So I think we should not see what happens on the pension side as a disturbing factor. I think nonetheless, if we look at the total outlook for the Monetary Policy Committee, the balance of forces will suggest it's time to start cutting interest rates, even if you start at a modest level. So you might see that if things persist as they're going on now, we might, by the end of the year, see 2 cuts in interest rates by the end of the year. So that is the actual scenario which the Monetary Policy Committee will have to deal with when they meet next month.
Yeah, Prof. Raymond Parsons, thank you so much for your time and your insights this morning. Really do appreciate it.
Our tugs have a great plan to illustrate that they are not just intelligent students in class, but on the field of play as well. Meanwhile, the Zuma-based outfit want nothing except for 3 points to run away from the unpleasant zone. The capital city confronts eThekwini. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Lindelani Ladies FC on Sunday 25 August at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAfm. Leading the conversation.
The city of Johannesburg has a new speaker in the city council, and that is Nobutla Mthembu, who is a councillor of Action SA in the city. The DA challenged that by putting forward their own nomination for a candidate for the speaker position, despite the fact that the DA had called for council to be dissolved. Why is that? Nikki Ram, who's the DA chief whip in the council, joins me. Nikki, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. The DA did two things here that seems to not speak to each other. One, challenge the speaker's position, but also at the same time call for council to be resolved. What was the logic there?
Good morning, Oliver, and good morning to your listeners. Thank you for having me. First of all, our stance is quite clear. We are calling for the dissolution of council. The only way that we can get the city stable again is by getting a new mandate from the voters to stabilize the city of Joburg. That was disallowed last week, unfortunately, by the then speaker. And when yesterday we were called to a meeting by the city manager because the speaker calls for council to sit. So when there's no speaker, the city manager is mandated to do that. Yesterday's meeting was a one-item agenda that was to elect a new speaker. The DA, sadly, after we weren't allowed to table our motion to dissolve council last week, we needed to put up a speaker candidate, which we did in Noni, because we will, as the DA, always fight for the best interests of the residents of Johannesburg.
Weren't you skipping a few steps there, Nikki, calling for the dissolving of council when the city of Johannesburg hasn't been taken under administration for being in disarray is a crucial step?
Okay, so we're sitting in a very precarious political situation at the moment. We have a government that's run by the ANC in the province, which is under Premier Lesotho. Premier Lesotho has pretty much put his head in the sand regarding Johannesburg and just left the ANC-run coalition in Johannesburg to do as it pleases. So there's no political will for the province to actually look after the interests of the residents of Joburg.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Nikki, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. I want to bring into the conversation Action SA leader Herman Mashaba. Herman, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. You now have City of Johannesburg in the bag as negotiated with the ANC. The City of Ekurhuleni is next. When do we expect those changes to happen?
First of all, good morning, Oliver, and good morning, SAfm listeners. Yes, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane will be next. It's actually, really, it's beyond belief the arrogance of the DA, actually ignoring the constitution and the legal framework of how this country operates. I cannot understand how a party with 71 councillors out of 270 can call for the dissolution of council. This is arrogance of the highest order, total disrespect for the 6 million residents of the city of Johannesburg. I think, let me put this into perspective and also give you a little bit of background to the instability of the city of Johannesburg in particular, because the instability of the city of Johannesburg started in 2019 when the DA leadership were planning my removal, and my sin at the time why they wanted me removed because I was fighting corruption. I fired 3 of their corrupt the MMCs who they actually not even removed from council. They were fighting with me that I'm an EFF mayor because I was also putting effort in providing services in poor communities, giving them toilets. To fast forward to 2021, they dropped from 104 councillors to 71. That is what they are sitting with right now. We as Action SA engineered to put them into council, allow them to have Dr. Popalazzi as the mayor. They sabotaged that administration of refusing to take over the city of Johannesburg. So we are surprised today now that the political dynamics have changed. Now all of a sudden they regard themselves as victims, whereas the instability of Johannesburg in particular has been as a result of DA. You take Tshwane for that matter. since 2016, the city of Tshwane has been run by the DA. If you look at just to give an example of the area where I come from, where I was born and I grew up, Amanskral, over 30 people died of receiving dirty water. DA in 2019 gave a 294 million rand tender to Edwin Sodi. Edwin Sodi, who had absolutely no knowledge whatsoever about the water treatment plant refurbishment. 40 million rands more expensive. Edwin Sodi's company not on the city's database. These are some of the issues I can keep going on. But today they are claiming to really be the ones to be the solution to those countries' problem. I think for us as Section SA, we're taking serious exception to this, because I'm sure, Oliver, for you guys as a media, you know how many times since 2021 where we even went to the extent of asking the DA to say, DA, the Freedom Front Plus, IFP and SNSA pleaded with the DA to say, DA, if you don't want to govern Johannesburg, then give us your vote with us on an issue-by-issue basis, so that you can hold us accountable, so that we can avoid the residents of the city of Johannesburg suffering from the ANC EFF. Completely refused. I'm sure you can call Dr. Palazzi anytime to can verify this.
Just quickly, is it your intention, along with the ANC, to unseat Celia Brink in the city of Tshwane?
Well, we as Section SA, we're busy right now consulting with our structures. Yesterday, I had a very successful meeting with our PC in Gauteng. Early next week, our team will have meetings with our REC in Tshwane and our caucus. And if we get the mandate, absolutely, we are going to remove him from Tshwane and put in a capable mayor who can focus service delivery.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. Is it your intention, pending confirmation of mandate from your structures, to unseat Celia Brink?
Well, I can tell you without any shade of doubt, if we get the mandate from our structures who are extremely unhappy, if we get the mandate, then without any shade of doubt, we'll put in a mayor who's going to provide and focus his service delivery on all the residents of the city of Tshwane.
In your negotiation with the ANC, are you going to ask them to vote with you for the mayor, or are you going to vote with the ANC for the mayorship and do a reverse of what's happening in the city of Johannesburg?
Oliver, I think City Council is run on the basis of numbers. Neither the ANC or us have got numbers on our own. So we'll have to speak to our other political parties. So ANC has taken the responsibility to speak to the other parties to really support us in the event that they get the support from their structures, and us as Section SA get the mandate from our structures. ANC is busy consulting their structures. Section SA is consulting our structures.
Would you like
give us weight.
Would you like for the next mayor in the city of Tshwane to be a member of Action SA? Yes or no?
I think it would really be premature to put the cart in front of the horse. I think obviously once we get the mandate to continue with the discussion, it's only then that the ANC and Action SA can then start looking at the composition of the team to lead that city.
Yeah. Would it not cause more instability right now in Ekurhuleni?
No, absolutely not, because we will, with the ANC, we'll have the numbers and other parties, and we've really agreed on voting on an issue-by-issue basis. All of us, ANC of today is not the ANC of yesterday. They've really learned the lesson of ignoring service delivery, focusing on other things. That is why for us as Section SA, from day one when we said we've changed our mind based on what's coming out on the ground, that people of Tshwane and Gauteng and Ekurhuleni need stability. We really made this arrangement that we will vote with one another on an issue-by-issue basis. The only thing that none of the parties must accept is corruption. So everything else we can talk about it. We are human beings, we make mistakes. But the one thing for sure is that public monies, a cent of public monies cannot be stolen. When we put in the budget for a service provision of a road, it costs 10 million rand. We must make sure that we appoint the right service providers, hold them to account to deliver that project.
Is it your submission now that the ANC is less corrupt than the DA and better at governance than the DA?
No, absolutely not. I think it is on record that the ANC and DA both corrupt the organization that I've had the privilege and honor to work with them. Obviously, I was never a member of the ANC, but at my age and my profession, I grew up with ANC people and I know them, and there's a reason why I got so angry with them when they started the level of corruption in mismanagement. And I thought that DA was the alternative, only to find that actually the DA not from corruption, they're not as corrupt as ANC. But one thing for sure is that they want the status quo. They don't want to see redress in this country. They think people in the townships, they don't pay taxes, they don't vote for the ANC, for the DA, they must continue living in that abject poverty. And that's something that Herman Mashaba says, no ways, it's not going to happen. Our people in the township are not poor, they're not unemployed because they wanted to be there. We've had more than 300 of colonialism, 70 years of apartheid, 30 years of ANC misrule. So we need a new government that can actually fix this up to make sure that we give justice to the poor and the marginalized in our country.
Herman Mashaba, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Let's take a listen at some of your reactions to our conversations.
Keeping you informed and ready for the day ahead on #SAfm Breakfast.
These are some of your WhatsApp voice note reactions to some of the conversations we've been having so far this morning.
Morning, John from KZN. Regarding the Botswana issue, I think that South Africa should ban the import of Botswana beef in return and Namibian beef, and give our local beef producers a lift, and stop the imports.
Hi, Oliver. Morning. No, I want just you to ask Herman Mashaba there. He was telling the whole country, I can't work with ANC. What is he doing now? Now they are together now. He was telling the whole nation, I can't work with ANC. Yeah, politician. I really don't know. This is Prince in P.
There are no permanent enemies in politics. Kirk in Cape Town, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Not too great, as you can hear from my voice, but go ahead. What's on your mind?
Okay. Herman Mashaba, Action SA, ANC, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, and Gauteng. The record of the ANC in regional politics is really poor, and solely blaming the DA, who are the only shining light of governance in South Africa, comes across as very weak, and the flip-flopping between those council members in those areas is very sad to see, because service delivery is the ultimate victim, and so are the residents of those three regions. So for me, it doesn't make sense to blame the ANC to blame the DA when it's a total mess there. And Panyaza the Sufi is doing his own thing in Gauteng, wanting to assert his, in my non-professional opinion, his 2028 plans for his presidential campaign. So there's no intention or desire to work together to make it work. It's just...
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave you there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it. Kirk in Cape Town. Do you agree with Kirk? Give us a call, 086 000 2032. It's 7:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
In news making headlines for this hour, 10 people who have been expelled from the MK party are expected to hold a press briefing today following the Western Cape High Court's postponement of their matter yesterday. They are challenging their expulsion from the party and the removal from their positions as members of parliament. Meanwhile, the MK party leader Jacob Zuma will today brief the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. The former EFF members Floyd Shivambu and Mzwane Lemanyi are expected to be present. And lastly, the Deputy Defence Minister Bantu Holomisa says he has met with the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu and the Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane to discuss the escalation of extortion in the province. It's alleged that extortion syndicates in the Eastern Cape are demanding protection fees from businesses, schools and healthcare facilities. I'll be back at 8 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow on the Mopani Highway coming out of Shoshanguva after an earlier crash at XX. It's also forced a lot of traffic backlogging on the M35, the alternative Sopan Road. That is now fully loaded coming in towards the Ondus Depot part of Pretoria. Crash on Joburg Gen 3 South at Marlborough Drive. There's the backlog extending into the Beclue interchange. The Mike 1's heavy this morning, extending queues from Boysons right through to about Oxford Road in Parktown area. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg on your way to Durban, it's a heavy Thursday with breakdowns near Market Road, and then you've got the sort of roadwork, the new roadwork section closing the right lane just south of Market Road. So it's a queue almost back as far as Chotta Mortal. There's a lot of trucks backing up through there as well. Two queues on Durban's N2 North one. The first one, the usual one, between the M7 and Westwood Mall. Once you work past that, you're in some pretty heavy traffic from Queen Nandi Drive up to a breakdown in the roadworks before you get to Gateway. Cape Town side this morning, N7 very heavy. Vangate Mall through towards Epping area, and then Goodwood through to Bosman's Dam Road remains jammed up. Crash on Baden Powell Drive at Jeff K. Masamola on your way passing Khayelitsha towards the N2. And there's also a bit of sand on the carriageway to watch out for in the Mon Wabisi beach area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Sai Khan.
A very good morning. Let's start with cricket. The Proteas are set to take on the West Indies in a highly anticipated 3-match T20 series kicking off at the Brian Lara Stadium tomorrow 9 p.m. The first ball will be bowled fresh from a Test series win. The Proteas team have a revamped squad with a mix of young talent and seasoned bowlers like Lungi Ngidi and Otniel Bartman. Head coach Rob Walter believes they have the firepower to make early breakthroughs, a key challenge in their previous encounters. With the T20 World Cup on the horizon, this series will be critical for the Proteas to fine-tune their squad and tactics. Here's coach Rob Walter.
In my opinion, it's 18 months away from a 2026 World Cup in India. We've got 9 series from now until then, before that World Cup turns around. In terms of, giving guys international opportunity, playing against quality T20 sides like we are, not every one of our players is a marquee player in the league, so we have to use these opportunities. We need to grow the base of our players that are competing at a level. And so for me, the importance of fixtures like these are massive.
And moving to some rugby, where the Springboks scrum half Faf de Klerk hopes to prolong his career as long as possible as he eyes up a third Rugby World Cup appearance. The 32-year-old is currently sidelined with a thigh injury which could see him miss the remainder of the Springboks test matches this year. But the Bok 9 is using this time to potentially prolong his career. He missed the Springboks 2 test matches against Australia through injury, and that same concern means he will also miss the Rugby Championship clashes against the All Blacks in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Here's Faf de Klerk.
Just speaking to specialists at the moment, but not really sure how long, but it's looking positive. Not really sure when I'll return yet. They still need to sort that out, so I don't really want to say unless I don't know. But yeah, it's looking positive and I'm feeling pretty good. It's been niggling me for a few weeks, just through kicking and sprinting and stuff, so I think it just comes from my MCL injury that I had a few months ago.
Let's go to soccer, where the Cape Town City chairman, John Committis, has revealed the club faces serious challenges regarding where to host their fixtures for the 2024-25 season. This comes in the wake of severe weather conditions that's in Cape Town, forcing the temporary closure of the already limited stadiums and led to their counterparts, Stellenbosch FC, going to Durban for matches meant to be played at Darnie Craven. Now, the citizens have been able to secure the DHL Stadium for the first leg of their MTN8 semi-final on Tuesday, but the state of the pitch will not be its normal mint condition.
I think once the sun comes out, which has been now in the last couple of days, things change quite quickly. So we're keeping optimistic that we will have a decent pitch to play with. But it's far cry from what we've been used to in the past at the Cape Town Stadium, especially. It's difficult to manage both the rugby and the football on the pitch side, let alone the availability of the stadium. That has become even less and less for us.
And finally, cycling, the Czech rider Pavel Bittner beat Wout van Aert in a photo finish to win stage 5 of the Vuelta a España in Seville. The 21-year-old Bittner's first victory at one of cycling's 3 Grand Tours. Primož Roglic retained the race leader's red jersey comfortably by finishing in the main bunch at the end of the 177-kilometer flat route. That's it for now. More sport, top of the hour on SAfm Breakfast. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAfm.
36 minutes after 7 o'clock, Ntauleng is back with the business update. They've gotten a silver medal, and now it's from the Olympics, and now it seems like they've got good financial results. That's Kuro. They gave their financials yesterday. How did that go, Ntauleng?
So it seems like South Africans are still prioritizing private education, Oliver. This evident in Curo's earnings. For the half-year period, the group delivered a 12% rise in profit and an 8% increase in revenue. Revenue growth there being boosted by growth in learner numbers and an increase in school fees. Now, currently, about 72,758 learners are enrolled at schools owned by Curo, and tuition fee revenue ticked up 6.8%. Interestingly, Curo says it experienced less bad debts in its high schools. However, growth in its primary schools came in lower. The group's CEO, Kobus Lopsa, says the challenging effects of higher interest rates on a constrained consumer impacted younger families who have children in lower grades negatively. This has been ongoing for about a year or two for Curo. And it also says it's been experiencing lower enrollments of learners in the youngest grades of primary and pre-primary schools. Average fees per learner in the meantime ticked up 6% this year. Parents, however, will get some relief as Curo lowered its fee hike for 2025. It's pegged in a 5.5% rise in fees for next year.
And Spur, they say that consumers are shrugging off constraints and coming into their doors.
That's right. It seems like South Africans are not just prioritizing private education, but they're also making an effort to squeeze in dining out. This, of course, being reflected in Spur's results. In the full-year period, revenue was up 14% and earnings rose over 11%. The group that owns the likes of Hassa Grill, Rokomamas, Panarottis, and Doppio said it noticed an uptick, particularly in dinner trading. It highlighted that the first quarter of the reporting period delivered a strong performance off a high base, while it experienced slower trading patterns in the second quarter. Interestingly, the Spur brand's voucher redemption rate ticked up, sitting at 78%, also just showing that customers are also just prioritizing value and rewards in this environment. Consumer, or rather customer count numbers remained unchanged, but average spend per head grew above menu inflation. The star performer for the group over the period was Doppio, in which it bought a controlling stake last year. Moving forward, Spur plans on opening 47 new restaurants in South Africa and 13 internationally. It believes the general improvement in the macroeconomic environment will benefit consumers' spending power moving forward.
When last have you eaten at Spur?
I was actually there 2-3 weeks ago for the rib special.
It's on a Wednesday, right?
Yes, but they have it on the weekend as well.
On the weekend. I haven't
sometimes.
I haven't had. I must say, I will say, I don't think Spur has the best ribs in South Africa. But yeah, let's give it.
They're not the best, but they're cheap.
They are affordable, but they're certainly not the best. They certainly aren't. Yeah, let's look at those indicators out of the markets close yesterday.
So kicking things off in Asia, stocks there mostly trading in positive territory after the release of the Fed minutes boosted sentiments. With that, the Japanese Nikkei is up 0.4%, but China's Shanghai index is down 0.12%. News around China's stock markets heading for a straight third year of record delistings weighing on that market. Meanwhile, in Wall Street, futures are in the red with traders digesting those positive Fed minutes, but also waiting on more clues on the trajectory of monetary policy as Powell prepares to deliver a speech at Jackson Hole on Friday. Sentiment is upbeat back at home with slowing inflation boosting rate cut bets from the SArb. The all-share ticked up 0.87% in yesterday's trade. The rand, however, a bit weaker, trading at 17.89 to the greenback.
And darling, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. I wonder which outlet in South Africa you think might have the best ribs. Let me know where you find the best ribs in South Africa. Tweet me, it is at Oliver_speaking. Or maybe I just haven't had spur in a long time. Maybe I should and refresh my memory around that. Advocate Sipho Mantula standing by with the Africa Update.
Africa Update on SAfm.
We begin this morning, Advocate Mantula, good morning, in West Africa, in Burkina Faso, where the juntas have written to the United Nations over Ukraine's alleged rebel support. Tell us about that.
Refreshing morning, Jumbo Kiko, into the listeners. The letter that was written by 3 foreign affairs ministers from Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, have asked the United Nations Security Council to take responsibility for Ukraine's action and to prevent subversive acts that threaten regional and continental stability. You will recall that last month there was this issue that Ukraine was supporting the Tuareg rebels by also assassinating or killing some of their Russian Wagner group in Mali, and as well as there are allegations that Ukraine have been supporting all those rebels. Even if Ukraine foreign ministry have denied all those allegations, the letter has gone already to the UN Security Council coming from the 3 military leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger.
Niger is in sticking on that. They're resuming oil exports to via Benin. Tell us about that.
Remember the ECOWAS sanctions against Niger, they also caused this tension, but Niger also pulled out with Benin at some point, but nobody knows how this dispute has been resolved actually to this resume of the oil, but we know that was through the Chinese mediation, because the Chinese are the ones who are funding this pipeline to the west coast between Niger and Benin. Hence now they've opened this pipeline, which will benefit both countries, because Niger is also been removed from the sanctions by ECOWAS, and it's having its own alliance with Burkina Faso and Mali. It also strengthened their economic growth.
Yeah, Uganda, they too want to expand their oil exports by increasing explorations. Tell us about that.
This comes from their energy minister, a woman by the name of Ruth Nkambabirwa, who said yesterday in Kampala that Uganda has seen some parts of 6.5 billion barrels of oil that they are looking at Albertina Basin. This is a basin that is bordering the DRC. Might cause tension. They have known about it for almost two decades, but they are only going to start to exploit come next year, 2025. This also increases Uganda's potential on the oil rather than to rely in China or rely in France. They are pulling their own that they have also going to liaise with Tanzania in terms of this export of the crude via the port of Tanzania.
Yeah, and Lesotho is celebrating its bicentennial today.
Lesotho might be celebrating, but there's Afro barometer that came and said that the Basotho have taken pride on their national identity, but there are still challenges in that country. There are issues around, they might be proud of their ethnic identity, express tolerance, but the issues is that the people of Lesotho, they have showed limited trust in their political leaders, and they are voicing concern about the direction their kingdom is taking. They've looked at many issues that of corruption amongst members of parliament. They've looked at the performance of their prime minister, this Afro barometer, and there are many questions that are being asked to say how do ordinary people of Lesotho or the Basotho perceive their state of the nation. 200 years on, because it's very important to look at social cohesion, but also the issues of economic growth, as well as they are looking at their economic issues in Lesotho, and also fighting poverty, because one of the challenges in our landlocked countries around South Africa, Oliver, is that there's still the elements of poverty creeping. There are also issues of living conditions of ordinary people.
Yeah, and in our archives, it is in 1978 today when Huey Newton passed away.
Actually, I've put two of them. The Black Panther leader died in 1989, is 35 years. Johnston Kamau Jomo Kenyatta, the father of Uhuru Kenyatta, died on this day also. It's almost, you can say, 46 years ago when Jomo Kenyatta, the founding father of Kenya, died on this day. But also I looked at the African diaspora, the founder of the Black Panther, Hugh Newton, who was known as one of the critical thinkers in the early 80s. You will recall, for our listeners, they should look at his autobiography, The Revolutionary Suicide, published in 1973, republished in 1995. And for Jomo Kenyatta, they can read more about facing Mount Kenya. Interestingly, talking about Kenya, Raila Odinga is the candidate for the AU chairpersonship in 2025. Santosan Oliver is still leading the conversation, SAfm, observing the Women's Month.
Evikan Bantula, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. How much do you pay your domestic worker on average? Because it seems like we're not paying domestic workers in South Africa enough, still well below the minimum wage. We're going to be talking about that in a very short while. And I really do want to know from you, where in South Africa can I get the best ribs? Send me a WhatsApp voice note, 0614-104-107. On the other side of this, we continue.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide.
Now, South African domestic workers have a legislated income target, and that is the national minimum wage of the national minimum wage, and they received a 14% increase on top of that. Importantly, it must be noticed that the vast majority of the domestic workers in South Africa are still earning well below that. And we're going to be speaking to Pinky Mashiane, who's the founder and president of the United Democratic Workers of South Africa, in a very short while. But let's have a listen at some of your WhatsApp voice note reactions.
Mr. Oliver, good morning. It's Ndumiso from Waterfall. Look, I was just thinking, just after the election results were released, there was a circle of people who were advocating to say the ANC needs to form a coalition with the EFF and MK. Yeah? So now, considering that MK has expelled 14 MPs, it just goes to show how unstable that coalition would have been. So what we have at the moment, I think if anything, it's the better devil, or the better option, So it just puts that clarity right on our faces. Good show, thank you.
There's been an ongoing feud in the Eastern Cape between a local chief of a specific area and the local governing body of a school, Lapumikwezi Primary School, and it got to a point where King Dalindyebo had to intervene. In fact, King Dalindyebo at some point said he doesn't know this chief. Now, the MEC in the Eastern Cape, Fundile Kate, commends King Dalindyebo for his intervention over there. Joining us for more detail on this is Malibonga Mtima, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Education. Malibonga Mtima, thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning. Thank you so much. Give us context about what the nature of the feud was between the chief and the local governing body of the school.
Good morning, Zane. Thanks for having me. Yes, there was a feud that was born of the fact that some of our schools are having towers that are belonging to network companies. So the team led by this chief went to this school, and they demanded that the school must assist them to ensure that they get the money that is or the proceeds of the tower. Remember, these towers are rented to our schools, and the proceeds are used by schools for their own necessities. So in this regard, they were saying since it's in their community, it must be paid to them. A meeting was held with the King Buelekaya, Dalinjebo, and subsequent to that meeting, after I went to report this, he convened his meeting where he clarified that no one is supposed to do that, and the community that was afraid was at least liberated because was able to give them the direction, and the school that was closed for 5 days reopened yesterday and resumed teaching and learning thanks to his intervention.
Is there any action that will be taken against the specific chief?
Currently, there is a team that is led by the Office of the Premier that is dealing with all those things, which is meeting all those that are allegedly involved in this. Remember, they did not only do this, but there are others that were affected. But for us, the issue was the schools. Hence, all issues relating to or pertaining to data safety are handled by the Office of the Premier. So thus far, we're happy because at least they've been able to allow our schools to happen. Any action that will be taken will be led by the Office of the Premier, not us.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time this morning, Malibonga. I think we really appreciate that clarity. We're going to get a response from the department next week, or at least from the Premier, on whether or not action will be taken. Disrupting learning and teaching for 5 days for your own criminal intentions must not be tolerated in South Africa. Let's take your latest traffic.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Right, very important information if you're coming out of Shoshanguve this morning. The big crash of the Mopani Highway at Block XX, that's been cleared. So the Mopani Highway is moving nicely. Contrast that with the alternative route that everybody moved on to earlier, the M35 Soutpan Road from the Shoshanguve side into Onderstepoort. It's a massive queue. So the R80 is the route to get through now at this hour. Joburg's Mike 1 is heavy. This queue's effectively from Uncle Charlie's right through to Oxford Road in the Parktown area. Durban's M2 North still under 2 pressure points, one M7 through to Westwood Mall, and then it gets heavy again from just after Inanda Road. There's a broken down vehicle in the roadworks, so you're down to 1 lane approaching Gateway, and that queue's back through Kumashu, back through Queen Nandi Drive, as they're working back towards the Inanda Road exit pretty quickly. Looks like the truck stuck south of Pietermaritzburg at Market Road, which backed everything up earlier this morning, has been cleared through. Traffic busy, but it is starting to move again. Cape Town, the N7 North Goodwood through to Bosmansdam Road, looking busy this morning. There's also been a crash on 4 Trekker Road at Hugo in the Goodwood area. That's causing a delay primarily if you're coming up the route from Elsie's River in towards 4 Trekker Road northbound. So very heavy backlogging going on there. And just staying in Cape Town, the M3 this morning, quite heavy. Queues from just sort of around the bottom of Wynberg Hill all the way through to UCT, and then it stays busy into Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2 as the top 8 take on a new challenge. This week, they delve into the world of social media and learn what it takes for a recipe video to go viral online. Working together, they must create their own unique version of a famous social media bake. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. only on SABC2.
The clock is ticking fast as we approach the celebration of Sport Queens in Mzansi Africa, honoring the passion, courage, and excellence of women in sport. Experience the G-Sport Awards 2024 finalist announcement this Thursday, 22 August at 12 midday, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Keeping you informed and ready for the day ahead on #SAfm Breakfast.
The median earnings of domestic workers in South Africa is around 2,350 rand a month, well below the national minimum wage and also well below the national median of income, which is 5,417 Rand per month in South Africa. Sweep South, they conducted a survey on the income and wages of domestic workers and found that domestic workers by and large still earn well below the national minimum wage, despite the fact that they received a 14% hike on the national minimum wage. What are the barriers to this, and why is it that it has not reached the point where people who employ domestic workers aren't paying them enough? Pinky Mashiane, who's the president of the United Domestic Workers of South Africa, joins us. Pinky, good morning. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. What are some of the barriers that domestic workers face when it comes to remuneration?
Good morning to SA listeners. Thank you for having me, daughter. The other barriers that we have is that domestic workers are afraid to ask for increment from their employers. And there's also domestic workers who've been working for many years and they haven't got any increase. Actually, the 2.3 is even better. There are domestic workers who are working Monday to Sunday who are earning 2,000 Rand, 1,800 Rand a month. So employers are doing as they please in this sector because domestic workers are working as individuals. I also feel like if maybe we can have a bargaining council for domestic work, that's where we can sit with the employers and be on the same table and share our views about these domestic workers.
Yeah, as a bargaining council could potentially help resolve some of these issues. The fear is, and perhaps what a lot of domestic workers have said in the past is, their fear is that if they ask for too much, that they might not have a job, their employer might get rid of them or whatever the case may be. How much of that is actually true?
It is definitely true. Some domestic workers are afraid to ask for increment because they might lose their jobs. The employers will just say, we can't afford that. While they can afford, they can buy their dog foods that are very expensive but can't minimum wage, which is not even a living wage. So it's true that they are afraid to lose their jobs. And other employers are even exploiting domestic workers more because they reduce the days of work and reduce their salaries and make domestic workers to suffer more.
Yeah. What is the minimum wage for domestic workers the rate per hour at the moment?
It's 27.58 Rand an hour, of which only domestic worker who's working 8 hours a month is about 4.4, who's working 8 hours a day, 5 times a week is about 4.4, and the domestic worker who's working 9 hours a week for 5 days is about 4,960. So many of them are even working more than these hours because they do work on Saturday and Sundays and on public holidays without getting overtime payment.
Wow. One of the other issues that domestic workers were complaining about in terms of conditions of employment was that of the compensation for occupational injuries and disease payments, COIDA. A lot of domestic workers would get hurt on duty, but they would have to cover their own medical expenses. They have now been given COIDA protection. Have employers of domestic workers been making the necessary contributions?
It is very difficult for a person who has not registered Pinky for 20 years or for 30 years to register Pinky with COIDA today. It's another struggle. It's another long way that you'll have to take with domestic workers. And they are getting injured on duty. No, some, even if we can look at the injuries, they are crippled on duty, and there was no compensation from the employers and from the government. This is the third year. It's going to be the fourth year in November of COIDA. Wow. But we are seeing, many domestic workers still don't know about COIDA. Many employers still don't know about COIDA. There's a lot of need to educate employers by the Department of Labor and also domestic workers. And it's difficult also to find domestic workers to educate them because the domestic workers in unions are just a handful.
Yeah. Is it illegal to pay a domestic worker less than the national minimum wage?
Yes, it is illegal. Unfortunately, domestic workers themselves don't do anything about it, but it is illegal. We can go to Labour Department and open a case of underpayment. Even the CCMA do reinforce national minimum wages when we take cases to them. And what's unfortunate that a domestic worker has been underpaid for 6 years. Maybe if we go to the Department of Labour, that domestic worker is dismissed, they will only enforce for 12 months from the time that the domestic worker is dismissed up to the time that the minimum wage increased.
Yeah, and this is a terrible, terrible state of events. But Pinky, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for your work. We're going to have to leave it there. Pinky is the founder and president of the United Domestic Workers of South Africa. Lady S says to me on Twitter that she prefers the ribs from Steers over the ribs from Spur because she doesn't like sweet tasting ribs. I don't know what the difference is. I'm going to try them both. I want to know from you, where do you find the best ribs in South Africa? Send me a WhatsApp voice note, 0614-104-107. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS card to 43187 now.
Top stories for this hour: expelled MK members to hold a media briefing and concern over South Africa's infant and maternal mortality figures. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The 10 people who have been expelled from the MK party are expected to hold a press briefing today, following the Western Cape High Court's postponement of their matter yesterday. They are challenging the expulsion from the party and removal from their positions as members of parliament. Tami Huzwayo, the former MK party student command leader and member of parliament, says the party did not inform them of their dismissal. He says they are seeking to challenge the false narrative that the party spokesperson, Nhlamulo Ndlela, is driving around their expulsion. Kuzayo explains why they approached the court.
We are simply saying that the process was unfair. We were not alerted. Otherwise, no one was going to resign from their permanent jobs to come and assume responsibilities in Parliament only to be removed after 2 months. So the process was not fair. We were not told prior. There was absolutely nothing that was said to us. We only received letters from Parliament and not even from the party itself. So we are just challenging that process to say that it wasn't fair.
Meanwhile, the MK party leader, Jacob Zuma, will today brief the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. The former EFF members, Floyd Shivambu and Mzwanele Manyi, are expected to be present. Meanwhile, the ANC acting spokesperson, Zuko Kodlimpi, has confirmed that Zuma, the former party president, has missed the deadline to appeal his expulsion from the ANC. The party expelled Zuma last month after the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee found him guilty of prejudicing the integrity of the party following his decision to join the MK. The committee gave Zuma 3 weeks in which to appeal the decision, but he has not done so. In other news, the Deputy Defence Minister Bantu Holomisa says he met with the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu and the Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane to discuss the escalation of extortion in the province. It is alleged that extortion syndicates in the Eastern Cape are demanding protection fees from businesses, schools and healthcare facilities. Mabuyane told ministers in the security cluster the situation was getting out of hand, particularly on the Wild Coast, which has major construction projects. Holomisa says the call for the deployment of the SANDF is premature, but should there be a need, they are ready.
The Premier is of the view that the military must be involved. Yesterday, the police department has released a statement to the effect that they are deploying detectives and police in the Eastern Cape, and we're hoping that after they have satisfied themselves and gathered enough intelligence, they can approach the president. It's only the president who can instruct soldiers. So if we are called upon to assist the police, the SANDF is ready anytime.
The authors of the Child Gauge 2024 say South Africa has higher infant and maternal mortality figures than it should have for its socio-economic level. This was revealed during the launch of the gauge at the University of Cape Town. Academics say less than half of 4 to 5 year olds attending early learning programs are developmentally on track. The university's associate professor Vidat Slemming.
Early childhood development is not about a place, it's not about an early learning program or a center. It's really about the comprehensive development of children from conception until they start formal school in all aspects of their development. And so we've got to think about how do we get women to access antenatal care, support services early.
And looking further afield, Ukrainian civilians are fleeing another town in the east of the country as the Russian military closes in on the city of Pokrovsky. The town of Malaria has come under increasingly fierce bombardment in the recent days. In his nightly video address, President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed to Ukraine's Western allies to fulfill promises to supply more ammunition.
We understand the enemy's moves and are strengthening our defenses. A review of ammunition supplies has been conducted. It is very important that our partners fully meet their commitments regarding every package and all our agreements. This is fundamental for defense.
Recapping the top story at 8, the 10 people who have been expelled from the MK party are expected to hold a press briefing today following the Western Cape High Court's postponement of their matter yesterday. They are challenging their expulsion from the party and removal from their positions as members of parliament. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SAfm News, I'm Eva Chipa.
And that's the news at this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187. Your own panel beater is like your favorite holiday destination. Not everyone's cup of tea, but perfect for you. Outsurance gets it. That's why, with Outsurance Essential, your claim is paid out in cash to use your own panel beater. Also get up to 1 million rand liability cover and other great benefits at a low cost. Outsurance Essential is priced for cars older than 5 years, valued under 125,000 rand and not financed. SMS CAR to 43187 or call 08600 60,000 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online and standard rates apply.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, very heavy on Joburg's Mike 1 now. There's a crash on Monday, so coming off the M12 at Uncle Charlie's in towards Xavier Street, that's quite heavy. And then you hear the backlog from Boyson's all the way through to Parktown. Some queues on the R24, airport bound, approaching Barbara Road. Might be a good idea just to put a bit extra time on your travels. Also, if you're heading up towards the King Shark at Durban sides, major delay of traffic this morning. Only one lane open in the construction before Gateway. That's due to a broken down vehicle. The traffic is extreme. It's all the way back through towards Queen, or through towards sort of Inunda Road territory, if you like, so that's bad. Diverting pressures jamming up the Mhlanga Rocks Drive option, heading north on the M4. Blue Lagoon through towards Mhlanga, looking pretty heavy as well. Cape Town, a couple of issues around Lugger if you're driving out of Cape Town towards the airport. Also, there's a crash just by Bunga Avenue. That's pushing traffic heavily back to Rappenberg Road. And on the inbound side, a bus has just broken down in the left lane in that Bunga Avenue area as well. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SAfm sports headlines, it's rugby. The All Blacks assistant coach Leon McDonnell quits ahead of the Springbok Test. And in cricket, the Proteas face the West Indies in the T20 series with a fresh squad and high hopes. All this and more at around 8:30.
Getting ahead of the morning with hashtag SAfm Breakfast.
7 minutes after 8 o'clock, I really feel like my voice is going to fail me. Oh my goodness, I hope to make it to the end of the show today. My voice is terrible. My throat is so sore. Kathy had just handed me some lozenges. Hopefully that helps me and gets me to the end of the program. But coming up in this hour, we're going to be having a very important conversation on mosquitoes. I want you to stick around for that because World Mosquito Day, that is a real day. And I know mosquitoes irritate and frustrate us all, and we don't care much for them. But there is something to be said about mosquitoes. We're going to be talking just before 8:30 this morning about World Mosquito Day, which is observed annually, and the progress on malaria elimination and efforts made in the SADC region with regards to that. We're going to be talking about university students and the dropout rate very specifically due to financial exclusion. Youth Capital, they blame NSFAS, or at least they're embarking on a study to calculate and quantify the impact of the NSFAS mismanagement on student dropout rates. In fact, unemployment in South Africa is the lowest amongst graduates. So if you graduate from university, your chances of getting a job are significantly higher. And then, lastly, in this hour, we're going to be talking about food justice. 39-year-old Siyakholo Mkoka from Khayelitsha in the Western Cape lives in a 7-person household. In that household, they only have 3,000 rand in income to feed all 7 people that entire month. access to food and food justice is a neglected conversation in South Africa. But let's hear some of your reactions to some of the conversations we've had. I want to know from you, how much do you pay your domestic worker? And if you're not paying them at the rate of the minimum wage, how do you feel about that?
I think it's all well and good that the government wants us to pay minimum wage for domestic workers, but what happens in cases where you actually provide all the boarding, a place to stay, food to eat, or all the transport needs? Do you then create an invoice where you also deduct those things? Because I'm sure the minimum wage doesn't provide for those things.
If you take a look at the minimum wage legislature, it actually does make a different dispensation for live-in domestic workers as opposed to domestic workers that are not live-in domestic workers. So there is a difference there, but there's also a regulated rate for which you have to pay domestic workers that are live-in domestic workers.
Good morning, Oliver. This is Karasin Polokon. I just want to comment on the interview that you just heard. Forgot the name of your guest, but then in connection with domestic worker payment and salaries. I think what your guest is ignoring is the fact that some of those people who are hiring domestic workers can't really even afford to pay anything beyond what they are paying. I know there are those that are exploiting domestic workers, but there are those that are struggling. They have to have a domestic worker because they have to go to work. There's no other way in which their children can be looked after, because people are not getting well paid. They struggle living from hand to mouth. So we need to also address that issue as well. Thank you.
But I also think there's a difference between a nanny and a domestic worker. If you're appointing somebody for childcare, then let them only do childcare. If you're letting them also clean your house, you have to compensate them for both of those things. If you can't afford it, choose one. Clean your own house if you can't afford it. I know it's controversial, and if you need somebody to look after your children, I get it, completely get it. But if that's all you can afford for, then pay for that and do your own domestic work, right? That is to say, cleaning your house by yourself.
Hi, I want this JCK counter from Sina. Olifir, Mayor of Joburg, Dada Morero. In his 100 days in office, he must clean up Joburg. Joburg is in mess. Joburg has gone to dogs with the filthy that is in town. Dirtiness. In his 100 days, he must just deal with dirtiness and clean up the town. Cleanness is next to godliness. How can investors invest in a dirty place? They can't. Let me rest my case for now. Jessica, counter from Sina.
Oliver Buruak, domestic workers, I feel sorry for them. As a former domestic worker myself, Oliver, now South Africa, it's worse, my brother. It's worse than those days. I recall by the time I was attending school, because my parents were suffering, right? So I could have a piece job and buy myself a school shoes. Today, South Africans, they have nothing. I don't want any names because of Scotland in Northern Ireland.
I think it's all well and good that the government wants us to pay minimum wage for.
Yeah, I'm taking your reactions. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. 13 minutes after 8.
Keeping you informed and ready for the day ahead on #SAfm Breakfast.
Financial exclusion in university is incredibly painful. Some of our smartest, most talented students don't complete their degrees or don't complete their degrees in requisite time as a result of financial exclusion, right? And there's a lot of what they call the missing middle in South Africa, who are students who don't necessarily qualify for NSFAS, but whose parents can't afford to send them to university, or at least can't afford all the expenses that comes with sending them to university. However, the mismanagement of NSFAS has caused a lot of disruption in the learning journeys of a lot of students in South Africa. But what impact has that had on the financial exclusion and dropout rate in universities? Fense Malachi, who is a digital strategist at advocacy campaign group Youth Capital, joins us for this. Fense, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. How badly has NSFAS been mismanaged, and what impact has that had on students?
Sure. So at Youth Capital, we have young people reaching out to us, telling us, their mental health has been impacted by either being defunded by NSFAS or the mismanagement or the lack of communication and information regarding funding through NSFAS. So we found that young people are really struggling, one, to finish their degrees, two, but also provide for their families, because we found that a lot of young people who are NSFAS are breadwinners in their families. And NSFAS is also helping their families in terms of keeping them above water in terms of food, in terms of electricity, etc. So I think the toll on young people is mental health, but then also their futures.
Yeah, and when we talk about the exclusion, financial exclusion in particular, what is the driving force on that? Is it tuition fees? Is it accommodation fees for students who are studying in provinces where they do not come from? Or is it a combination of these factors?
So I think within our advocacy, which is in line with the MEP 2030, we found that young people are trying to get the skills they need to enter the labor market. I mean, Status A has also confirmed that a tertiary education improves your chances of finding work in South Africa. And we found that with NSFAS, lack of communication, lack of knowing where to go, not understanding how to transfer from one university to the other, regulation within universities has caused a lot of issues where young people are sent in circles while studying, so they aren't able to complete their education.
Yeah, and talk to us about the survey, exactly what the parameters of it will be, because it's in relation to mismanagement of NSFAS, but the mismanagement of NSFAS is not just a financial one, it's also a corporate governance one.
So we've launched a national survey in line with our advocacy, which is ensuring that young people have the skills for the 21st century workplace. This is a national survey that's asking young people, what was the application process like? What was the appeals process like? Did anyone help you while you're appealing or applying? And if you were defunded, were you able to go to your offices and contact someone from NSFAS? So what we found is that, lack of communication, not knowing who to go to has really caused a lot of strain. And this national survey aims to quantify the cost and the impact of this mismanagement of NSFAS on young South Africans. And anyone who completes the survey is ensuring that another young person doesn't have the same experience that they did. And you can find the survey on youthcapital.co.za.
Yeah, and just lastly, what is the rate of dropout in South Africa and financial exclusion? Do we have those numbers from universities?
So that is difficult to quantify because people drop out at different points. I also think it's difficult to quantify because there's no monitoring and evaluations that is rigorous. But we know that as a result of students dropping out of university, the unemployment rate increases. So currently 2 in 3 young people are unemployed, even though they are able to work. So we can see the knock-off effect within the unemployment stats.
Yeah, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you so much for your time and your insights, Fencer. I really do appreciate it. Fencer is with Youth Capital.
SAfm has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
The clock is ticking fast as we approach the celebration of Sport Queens in Mzansi, Africa, honoring the passion, courage, and excellence of women in sport. Experience the G Sport Awards 2024 finalist announcement this Thursday, 22 August at 12 midday, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Here's something exciting. Tune in to catch the rebirth of Muvango's new season on SABC2. Muvango, every Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. and experience the drama and excitement with the new intriguing characters like Dr. Nonhlanhla Shimba, played by Leleti Kumalo. Good to see her back on the screens. And of course, your usual favorites, Azwindini, Rendani, Debo, and yes, of course, Khosi. It's a renaissance of new beginnings, love, secret, and betrayal. Remember, that's every Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. on SABC2.
The Science of Life on SAfm.
Today's World Mosquito Day, and this is a very interesting piece of trivia. Mosquitoes are the deadliest creatures on the planet. I had no idea about that. Dr. Tanishka Kruger, who is the project manager at the University of Pretoria's Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control, joins us on that. Doc, why are they the deadliest?
Good morning. Okay, the reason why mosquitoes are the deadliest is because they still account for more than 700,000 people annually, for the death of 700,000 people annually, and that is because they carry some of the world's deadliest diseases, for example, malaria being the most deadly of the mosquito-borne diseases.
Malaria doesn't seem to affect the whole world equally. It affects certain parts of the world, and that is mostly sub-Saharan Africa. Why is that?
Well, the reason for that is mainly because sub-Saharan Africa has the right climate, has the right circumstances. Everything needed for malaria to be a problem is found in Africa, and it's just a major challenge because of that. It is a disease of poverty, for example, and it just exacerbates, poverty, and it really is a challenge in Africa. There's just so much that is contributing to the reason why it is such a problem on the continent.
Malaria vaccines are easily accessible, at least I think so. I last had a malaria shot maybe 8-9 years ago. We have the medication for it. We have the vaccines. Why are we not winning the war on malaria?
Well, the problem with malaria is it is both preventable and treatable. And the reason I'm saying it's a problem is you would think because it is preventable that it wouldn't be such a problem. What happens is, though, that many of these resources, the drugs needed for, protection, the vaccines that you're referring to, which have recently been developed, they are not that easily, found or always accessible in some of the areas, very rural areas where the disease is found. And we also find challenges such as resistance against insecticides, where the mosquitoes are no longer dying when we treat the walls of houses with certain insecticides. Drug resistance is a major problem. And because of that, we cannot control the disease as we have been able to for the last couple of decades. And then there's so many other challenges if we look at, for example, climate and climate change. Climate is very important for the development of the mosquito, but also for the parasite's life cycle. And as climate changes, we find that the mosquito, for example, are suddenly found in areas where it's never been found before, or it's moving back to original areas where it was found before. So there's various of these little challenges that makes it difficult. And then also, when it comes to humans, lack of capacity, lack of training in certain skills, very important skills. And then, of course, a major, major problem is funding. We do not have the money or the funds needed to really make a major impact, especially in the African region.
Yeah, there's a collective action approach to solving malaria crisis amongst SADC countries, and the University of Pretoria, which is an institution you're at, had signed a memorandum with various facilities and institutions on becoming malaria free by the year 2030. What's being done? What needs to be done? And how is it going to be done?
Okay, first of all, the University of Pretoria Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control signed a very important memorandum just very recently with the Rollback Malaria Partnership to End Malaria. What's important about that is Rollback Malaria really works in the SADC region. And the reason or the importance behind this MOU is it shows the mutual dedication in addressing the complex challenges posed by malaria. The collaboration will focus on identifying research gaps and collaborating on projects that address challenges like I already mentioned, for example, research mobilization, resource mobilization and the impact of climate change on malaria prevalence, and also the development and implementation of initiatives that can help alleviate the challenges experienced. Now, the MOU will aim to strengthen cross-border collaboration, which is vital in the SADC region because these countries are so closely knit. They have characteristics that you find across the borders. It is very important for cross-border collaboration to take place in these countries. Joint research projects. Research are very important to make us understand the disease better, and knowledge sharing. We need to share our knowledge with our neighbors to ensure that we, reach elimination in these countries. So the target is 2030, and out of the 16 SADC countries, 3 SADC countries have already achieved elimination. It is a difficult thing to achieve, but we are going to try our best to get to it.
Yeah, and I mean, it really is a disease of poverty, which means that we need to be a lot more concerted in our efforts in eliminating it, because it affects disproportionately the least well of our people. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and I really do appreciate your work and your insights and helping us get to malaria-free world by the year 2030. Dr. Kruger.
Have a good day.
Dr. Tanishka Kruger, the project manager at the University of Pretoria's Institute for Sustainable Malaria Control. On the other side of this, I take some of your calls and reactions.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Let's go to the lines. Let's speak to Mpo out in Randfontein. Mpo, good morning. Go for it.
No, good morning, and good morning to the SAfm listeners. Now, earlier when you raised an issue with the configuration of cities, I think you're speaking to Mr. Masha about the other person from the DA that they want to disband Johannesburg municipality. So I thought it's not fair for the country. I mean they've led through those coalitions. So I think they should help us to stabilize government. But I don't know what's your sense as a presenter, because I think your question was beginning to suggest that there's something wrong with what Mashaba was saying. And my view is that...
What was my question?
The question was that is he instigating what do you call the instability by
yeah, my question was, is he not concerned that it would cause more instability? It's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, but I also thought, why would the DA want... I mean, people almost create an impression that if you have the DA on your side, there's stability. But I always think there's actually the other ones who cause instability.
Okay, thank you so much for your call, Mpo. Appreciate it. Let's go to Xolisa in East London. Xolisa, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. I just wanted to clarity around the minimum wage. The 4,000 rand, does it take into consideration in terms of whether the person lives and also maybe catered for within the household? Or do I have to pay the minimum wage and then deduct for groceries from this person? I just want to get clarity around that one, because the domestic worker who lives here full time will be eating from the same groceries and everything. So just clarity on those ones. Thanks.
Yeah, I do encourage, thank you so much for that. I'll have you listen on the radio. I do encourage people who have that question to go onto the Department of Labor's website, and you'll find the breakdown of the minimum wage there. Very specifically, there is a different dispensation for domestic workers that are living in domestic workers as opposed to those who are not. There is a different rate for that. So please do go and have a look at that. 086 000 2032. I'm taking your reactions. You can give us a call on 0614, send us a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107. Tweet me. It is at Oliver_speaking on Twitter and Oliver Dixon on Facebook. Before I go to the voice note, I just want to read this tweet that has come in from one of our listeners who says, Kabelo Moremu says the Mabopani Highway R80. Please ask the MEC of Transport or the Transport Minister to explain on when will they expand this route, because it carries almost 80% of the Pretoria-Joburg working class daily, and it is a small road that doesn't have the capacity for it. That is actually a very, very important question, and we're going to try and get some clarity on that. There's another tweet I want to read you, which I found very, very interesting. In fact, we've been trying to make this conversation happen for a couple of days now, and this is with regards to the broadcasting of Parliament. You would know that Parliament is broadcast, I think, almost exclusively on a pay-for TV network. Go to Guy says, where and how can ordinary South Africans listen to parliamentary debates when the same parliamentary channel remains the preserve of those who can afford pay TV? Why can't the same broadcast be available on a government radio channel? And that is a very important question. Access to Parliament is an important part of our democracy. We're reaching out to Parliament, and we're going to try and get a response from them as to what efforts are being made to have people who do not necessarily have access to pay TV to be able to access Parliament. And we'll try and bring you that conversation as soon as we're able to possibly able to bring you that conversation. It is 8:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
In news making headlines for this hour, a new witness is expected to take the stand when the case of 8 officers of the former VIP Presidential Protection Unit resumes in the Randburg Magistrate Court in Johannesburg this morning. The unit belongs to the Deputy President Paul Mashatile. In other news, the former MK Party Student Command leader and MP Tami Kuzwayo says he will continue to support the MK Party despite his expulsion from it. He is among the 10 MK Party members that have been booted out and removed from their positions as MPs. And lastly, the authors of the Child Gauge 2024 say South Africa has high infant and maternal mortality figures than it should have for its socio-economic level. I'll be back at 9 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Joburg's Mike 1. Earlier crash out on Monday, out of the way, so that traffic sort of normalising now. It's just even moving a little bit better than what you might be expecting. Bit of traffic between Boysons and Empire Road, but not too bad by its standards. The R24 towards the airport, out towards OR Tambo's a crash just by the Barber Road exit, and that's pushing a queue halfway back towards the Edenvale off-ramp. 2 queues to work through on your way from Pretoria to the airport. Roadworks at Clayville approaching Olifantsfontein. Queue number 2 is as you come between the Bobsfontein exit and the Benoni off-ramp. Durban, the big queues on the N2 north towards Gateway, easing up nicely. The breakdown, which dropped you down to a single lane for some time this morning, has now been cleared. And if you're heading out to Cape Town International Airport, using the N2, there's a crash in front of Langa, just by Bunga Avenue. That's quite a heavy backlog pushing back towards Rapenburg Road territory. N1 inbound still very slow as you come from Plattekloof through towards the elevated freeway. And Marine Drive still queuing up pressure there through Milnerton, heading down towards Boundary Road by Lagoon Beach. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Sai Khan.
A very good morning. We'll start with rugby in a major shake-up. The All Blacks assistant coach Leon McDonald has left the team just days before their crucial rugby championship test against the Springboks. McDonald's departure comes after what head coach Scott Robertson described as differing coaching styles that hadn't quite clicked. The decision was made mutually after a series of honest discussions, according to New Zealand Rugby, with 2 tough fixtures against the world champions in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Assistant coach Scott Hansen and contact skills coach Tamati Ellison will take over McDonald's duties. The All Blacks face the Springboks on the 31st of August and on the 7th of September. More rugby. The newly capped Springbok and Lions wing Edwil van der Merwe says inclusivity and representation in the current world champions team have played a big role in the All Black support dwindling in the country. Speaking to SABC Sport ahead of the test match between the Boks and the All Blacks, van der Merwe says winning and representation have everything now to do how the nation backs the team, the Springboks.
I think, yeah, you touched on it there. I think the reason probably people support the Springboks, number one, is they're winning games. But secondly, there's representation. There's someone in the team that looks like you, Just thinking back to my own personal Springbok heroes, Brayton Paulse. When I was little, I was obviously like, this guy looks like me. So I think representation in the Springbok team is quite important. And obviously he was a smaller winger, much like myself, but very fast, someone who's exciting to watch. So I think subconsciously I've modeled a lot of my game around him. And even if you look back to how we celebrated tries with his backflips and flick flacks, I think that's something. I can't do a backflip, but I certainly celebrate after a try, which I think is something I subconsciously got from Brayton Paulse.
And in the meantime, SA Rugby has confirmed key changes to the coaching lineup of its national teams in a bid to emulate the success enjoyed by the Springboks. Experienced former Springbok coaching consultant Space de Bruin and former Springbok Sevens captain Kevin Foote have been appointed to coach the Springbok women and junior Springboks respectively, while Bafana Nhleko has been redeployed from the SA Under-20s to the senior women's 15s team. Cricket, the Proteas are set to take on the West Indies in a highly anticipated three-match T20 series kicking off at the Brian Lara Stadium tomorrow 9 p.m. Fresh from a Test series win, the team has a revamped squad with a mix of young talent and seasoned bowlers like Lungi Ngidi and Otniel Bartman. Head coach Rob Walter believes they have the firepower to make early breakthroughs, a key challenge in their previous encounters. With the T20 World Cup on the horizon, this series will be critical for the Proteas to fine-tune their squad and their tactics. Finally, boxing. Floyd Mayweather, never known for his humility during his boxing career, even in retirement, nothing has changed before a fight. The American boxer Mayweather promised to put on a blistering display when he takes on John Gotti III in an exhibition fight in Mexico City. It will be Mayweather's first time south of the border.
I know we're going to have a sellout crowd, and I've done this a million times. So I'm here to show up, show out, and do what I do. I'm a fighter to the day that I die.
Floyd honored his word. He gave me the rematch. They didn't have to. Could have moved on and did his thing, and I appreciate that. And we're going to put on a good show. We're going to fight. So it's going to be exciting.
That's a wrap of your sport on SAfm Breakfast. We'll bring you more around 12:30 with John Hedeka. I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAfm.
And here for your final business update this hour, inflation eases to 4.6% in July. I'm sure, Ntaleng, that the markets will react positively to this in the next 20 minutes.
Definitely. Now, consumer inflation easing to 4.6%, as you mentioned, in July. This is from 5.1% in June. This is the lowest level in 3 years, and also the first time inflation is below the 5 to 6% range in 10 months. Now, this has been fueled by a slowdown in price growth for food, housing, and transport. Food inflation in particular falling from highs of 9% recorded last November to 4.5% in July. Now, the print, really good news and strengthens the case for a rate cut next month, considering that inflation now sits close to the SARB's midpoint of 4.5%. At the last MPC meeting, Kganyago was more positive about the trajectory of consumer prices and downwardly revised its projections as risks abated. In the meeting, there was also a more dovish tilt as 2 of the 6 policymakers voted for a rate cut. Now, this week's print really just shifting the conversation from whether the Reserve Bank will cut rates to by how much it will reduce them. The last time the repo rate was adjusted was in May 2023, when the bank increased the benchmark by 50 basis points to 8.25%, marking a 15-year high. Since November 2021, borrowing costs have risen by 475 basis points, providing pressure on many South Africans and weighing on the broader economic environment. Relief, however, might still be on the cards, supported by the slowing inflation, a stronger rand, and the trends are playing out globally. And so many economists are pegging in a cut next month, November, and in January.
And the used car markets, they're seeing positive numbers.
Yes, this doesn't come as a surprise considering the kind of pressure consumers are under. However, we are seeing a slight shift. In the most recent consumer confidence survey, indicators showed that there was an improvement in the durable goods sub-index, suggesting that South Africans are a bit more confident in making bigger purchases. What we are seeing, though, is a more cash-conscious consumer that's being reflected in the auto sector. In July, used car sales rose 14%. According to data from Auto Trader, 31,707 units were sold last month, nearly 4,000 more than in June. Now, this is a sharp contrast to new vehicle sales, which only picked up 1.5% in July. Now, topping sales in that used car market was the Ford Ranger, followed by the Toyota Hilux and the VW Polo taking up the third spot. Looking at broader sentiment in the auto market, the industry seems to be upbeat about its prospects, taking growth, of course, on those expected rate cuts, as well as the implementation of the two-part retirement system, which is also expected to boost consumer spending.
Yeah, 20 minutes to the markets opening. What are we looking at?
The local markets could be in for another upbeat day on the back of the overall positive market sentiment as well as those upbeat inflation numbers. Traders will be digesting earnings from pharmaceutical player Adcock Ingram and a trading update from Cashboard. Moving over to the local units, the rand taking a bit of a knock, not really benefiting from the upbeat sentiment, trading at 17.89 to the dollar. In Asia, stocks are mixed, but mostly in the green. China, there being a drag in the region as concerns over delistings weigh. Traders in the U.S. still digesting the U.S. Fed minutes. They're also eyeing commentary from Jerome Powell, who will be speaking at the Jackson Hole Symposium at the end of the week. With that, we are seeing futures markets ticking lower, currently trading in the range.
Darling, somebody on Twitter says to me, Turn and Tender has the best ribs. So now we have three players here: Steers, Spur, and Turn and Tender.
But Turn and Tender's price.
Really? I've never had Turn and Tender ribs. I don't know what they cost.
Where are you eating ribs?
On the streets at the taxi rank. Yeah, that's where I thought the best ribs are. So I'm going to try it all three. I want you to try it as well, and then we'll compare notes next week and see who has the best ribs. Turn and Tender versus Steers versus Spur. I really want to find the best ribs in South Africa. Darling, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. President Cyril Ramaphosa, along with the rest of the country, is mourning the passing of William Smith, Dr. William Smith, who passed away yesterday at the age of 87. He taught a nation. He really, really did teach a nation. In fact, I come from a generation of people who fell in love with mathematics because of Dr. William Smith being on the Learning Channel, on our TVs, teaching us. And he had a great sense of humor. And I think we will continue to celebrate his work and also mourn his work. But if there's one thing I remember most fondly about Dr. William Smith, and I really want to put out a plea here. I don't know who in the higher ups at the SABC is listening right now. There's a show Dr. William used to do called A Word or Two, way back in the day. Please put it on the SABC Plus app. There's great archives there on the SABC Plus app. I'd love to watch that show again. I was obsessed with A Word or Two. My mom and I could not get enough of that show. And I think that was, and it was primetime television. I think that was Dr. William Smith's greatest work, A Word or Two. One of the greatest shows we've ever had in South Africa. Let's bring it back. Let's put it on the SABC Plus app. I really, really want to watch it. Rest in peace, Dr. William Smith. South Africa thanks you. I thank you for creating a generation of young people that fell in love with mathematics and today have produced engineers, doctors, scientists, and all the likes. It is 18 minutes to the top of the hour.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAfm. Leading the conversation.
Food poverty in South Africa is a real thing. In fact, the food basket is increasingly getting more expensive. The good news we've had is that rate of inflation has slightly slowed down. We spoke about that in the first hour, in the second hour of the show. But what does it cost to feed a family in South Africa today at its most basic level? Bearing in mind, by the way, that South Africa has a crisis of malnutrition and obesity due to poor nutrition. Yeah, we don't all get the micronutrients that we need and deserve. Now, a family of 7, they only have 3,000 rand a month to feed their family. 3,000 rand to feed a family of 7 doesn't sound nearly enough. And Siyakola Mkoka from Khayelitsha says that they often have to ration food just to make it through the month. Joining me to have a conversation on this is Zukiswa Zimele, who's a communications manager at Food Justice. Zukiswa, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Perhaps to start the conversation here, you make the argument that food justice is a women's right issue primarily. Draw the link for me.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me on your show. So we know that, nutrition is primarily on the shoulders of women. South Africa has a lot of women-headed households. And so, the responsibility to feed all these people falls on the women. When we're talking about these unemployment rates, we know also that the unemployment level hits women the hardest, who are the primary breadwinners for these families. And so when you talk about this story of Siyakola Mkoka, it means that this is a reality for, a lot of households in this country. And this is something that we have to grapple with as a society, that, keeping families alive in the midst of rising obesity and undernutrition levels really falls on the women. And we're calling on government to rectify this.
Yeah, in what ways can government rectify it? Bearing in mind, by the way, that it is a women's issue and a women's right issue at its primary level.
Definitely. So one of the things that we argue is that there is an increasing proliferation of unhealthy foods in our food system. I mean, we know that almost 70% of the food that we find on our shelves is, unhealthy, ultra-processed foods. And these foods are made to be cheaper and are not as healthy. So they often you'll often find high levels of salt, sugar, and saturated fats in these foods. And this is what people have to buy because, this is what's affordable to them. So what we're asking the government is the first step is to make it that people are aware of what is in their food, in the food that they're eating. We know that people who have to care for people who have illnesses like diabetes want to make different choices, but oftentimes it is difficult due to poor nutrition, knowledge on nutrition. And so what we're calling for is front of pack warning label regulations. So this means that any food that is high in levels of salts and sugar and saturated fats, or in fact anything that contains artificial sweeteners, should have a triangle in front of it, warning people that these foods contain these foods. Secondly, we're calling on government to actually tax, to have taxes, health food taxes. And this money we're calling for to be ring-fenced, in fact, to increase things like the child grant, or to be used to subsidize healthier foods. We know that the healthier foods tend to be a little bit more expensive. And these are just a few things that government can start doing while we're figuring out this issue in the interim.
Wasn't that the idea behind the sugar tax, that it ought to be a ring-fenced tax regime very specifically for such purposes?
Definitely. So one of the things that Treasury will say is that it's not good financial planning to ring fence things, but we know that a lot of the money that we pay for things like fuel goes into the road accident funds. They wouldn't call that hard ring fencing, but it is a form of ring fencing, and so that's what we're calling for, to say, listen, this is an intervention that you as a government put in place for health promotion. The money that comes from there should in fact be used directly to actually improve the lives of ordinary South Africans.
Yeah, the food awareness part that you're speaking about, such as more conscious labeling, to what extent will that actually, do we have data that can tell us that it will result in consumer behavior changes?
Definitely. I mean, we know that this will work because in early last year, the government released for public comment the front of pack regulations, and these regulations were, the research was done with several universities in South Africa. We know that countries like Chile also have these regulations, places like Mexico have these regulations, and they have been shown to have some improvement. We know that mothers, in particularly, or caregivers, are the ones who really, benefit the most from these regulations. And just an anecdote also from our colleagues in Chile is that once these regulations are in place, we have children telling their parents, Mom, we can't eat this because this is not healthy. So if you remember, things like anti-littering campaigns, you've had children actually telling their parents, this is what's right and this is what's not wrong, this is what's wrong. And we need to have a cohort of young children growing up that are nutritionally savvy and are actually very clear, have a clear understanding of what it is that is good for their well-being as well.
You spoke there about the reduction of taxes on healthy foods. What food items would you place into the zero-rated basket?
So, with foods, food is a very delicate subject because it's cultural, first of all. So if we place certain foods that a different culture is not necessarily aware of, it might not benefit. So if you don't eat ding, perhaps, and we put a 0 rating on that particular food, it won't be something that you culturally gravitate towards. So this is something that we have to take some time to think about. But ultimately, it's to make sure that we decrease the overconsumption of ultra-processed foods.
Yeah. And lastly, very specifically when it comes to the food production level, because that's where a lot of the processing happens, are you recommending new legislation or additional legislature that makes sure that food production is more consciously driven?
For sure. I mean, when you look at the food pipe in itself, it's a very complicated and complex field, and you have various people organizing and working around. So from the very farmers at the beginning of the food chain all the way up to the retailers. And we're saying that everybody needs to come together to ensure that we create a sustainable value chain that benefits ordinary South Africans. What we cannot do is have these foods that are manufactured basically and not necessarily made. So these foods are made in labs to be hyper palatable. They've been over researched. These are the staples that we're consuming. That doesn't make any sense. As ordinary human beings, we know, the kind of foods we need to eat are not the ones that are super sweet, very tasty, very addictive. And this is something that we need to change. I mean, young people say we're losing recipes. That's what's happening here.
Yeah. We're losing recipes. Zukiswa, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Zukiswa Zimela is the communications manager at HEALA. HEALA is a coalition of civil society organizations advocating for equitable access to affordable, nutritious food in South Africa by building a more just food system. 10 minutes before the top of the hour, let's take your latest traffic.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Couple of things to know if you're heading out of Joburg or out of Pretoria for flight connections at the airport. First up, the R24, the airport highway from Joburg, a crash at Barber Road. Traffic still queuing into that scene. And then from Pretoria, you've got the two active roadwork zones, which are already heavily queued up on your way towards the airport. So the first one coming into Clayville at Olifantsfontein, that's long term. And then from Bapsfontein Road through the Benoni exit down towards Pomona Road, that's your second queue. And that's quite heavy for this time of morning. I don't think you normally sit in that sort of traffic for this time of day. Issues getting up through Midrand, looks like a problem just before Allendale Road, so starting to queue up through Buccleuch, and that's rippling back onto the N3 from sort of Limbro Park territory. The N3 all of a sudden backs into Buccleuch on that ramp off the N3 for a turn up in towards the Midrand N1 section. N1 Old Joburg Road through to New Road, full of traffic, better than the earlier. It's still busy on your way through to Joburg. The breakdown on Durban's end at Gateway has been clear. There is still a bit of residue backlog on that section of heading toward the airport. Not super heavy, but it is. And just while we're in Durban, this is really important this weekend coming up. The N3 highway will be closed again. Yeah, another weekend of a major route closure around Durban. It's pretty regular these days. The N3 is the route. It'll be fully closed both directions between Pavilion Mall and Spaghetti Junction from 6 p.m. on Saturday evening. It'll stay fully closed right through the weekend, the remainder of the weekend, until 4 a.m. on Monday morning. So it'll be a full closure, Pietermaritzburg bound, Durban bound, Pavilion Mall, Spaghetti Junction. You'll find yourself diverting onto routes like the M7, the M19. If you elect to use the M13, Sherwood Westfield, just keep in mind that's a big construction zone at the N2 bridge. So that route, which is primarily the local alternative, is going to be super heavy. So come into play, the M7, M19, you should be okay. Cape Town this morning, lots of sand on Baden-Powell Drive between Strandfontein and Muizenberg. It's right across the carriageway, so take it easy. Visibility impaired because that sand is blowing with the winds around Cape Town. And the N2 out of town towards the airport also struggling along. A crash by Bunga Avenue in front of Langer, and that's pushing traffic back through towards Rapenburg Road. And we're just getting this information in, trying to avoid this. Retreat Grassy Park area protesting this morning. M5 Prince George Drive at Military. It was peaceful earlier, but the protesters have now come out onto the main M5, closing that route. So if you're going between, let's say, Rondebosch, Kenilworth and Muizenberg, try and stay off the M5 and use alternative routes. Military Road in that area also affected. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAfm.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends. You need a weekend playlist.
When I started out, it was just a matter of seeing you every day. One day I'll reach it.
It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAfm.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
It is just about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. You would recall yesterday, apologies, we brought you that conversation with the Food and Allied Workers Union on the strike at the Heineken brewery in Gqeberha. We've reached out to Heineken for a response on it, and this is what they've said to us. Following a receipt of notice of strike by the Food and Allied Workers Union, strike action has commenced at the Heineken Beverages Gqeberha plant. The strike notice does not specify a clear demand, but we've been engaging with the union on the return to a 3-shift system. Shift patterns are determined by our operational requirements in response to the needs of our customers and consumers. The move to a 2-shift system was always temporary, and the return to a 3-shift system is now operationally required. We refute allegations claiming that we have not consulted, as we have engaged colleagues and unions extensively on these proposed changes and explained in detail to the affected groups. While we fully respect the right to strike in accordance with the law, we believe the strike is unlawful and have therefore approached the Labour Court for an interdict. Heineken Beverages remains optimistic in finding a mutually satisfactory and speedy resolution to this matter and have put in place measures to ensure the safety of all our colleagues while we minimize disruptions to our operations. That's the response that they've given, and it seems like this might drag out for quite a while. President Ramaphosa is off duty today as Paul Mashatile, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, is the acting president, and he will this afternoon lead a signing ceremony on the second presidential health compact at the union buildings. Let's have a listen to some of your reactions that has come through on the show this morning.
Hello SAfm family, this is Bishop Prince. Regarding the minimum wage for the domestic workers, I think it's a good thing. Everybody must earn a living wage that is able to sustain them. The only challenge that I think I've seen is that a number of people that are having the domestic workers are just your middle class workers. Somebody that is earning something like 15,000, 12,000, and then because of the need, they've got children and all that, they decide to hire somebody. So I think it makes it very difficult for them, for somebody that is earning 12,000 or 15,000, then to pay somebody 6,000 or 5,000. So that is why you see that most of them, they're just paying them 2,000 rand or so. Thank you so much.
Morning. On the issue of the domestic workers, I was hoping that the debate on the role of agencies in the domestic worker industry will be discussed. I believe there are agencies that's training domestic workers, and in return they have to give a percentage of their monthly salary once they find work, and that needs to be discussed too.
Hi Oliver, this is a caller from Cape Town. For example, with me, I cannot afford a domestic worker. I can afford the services that I can get from people. So then I have a nanny that's helping me from Monday until Friday, right? And then I use the services. I'm not sure if I am allowed to say the company, it's Swift South. So then the nanny is only looking after the baby, And then Sweep South, they come to clean the house almost every day. So the nanny is not cleaning the house, is not even cleaning the baby's food or whatsoever in the house. So because I cannot afford a domestic worker.
Good morning, Oliver. I am Takatayo in Cape Town concerning this extortion in South Africa, because I don't want to talk about Umtata because it's all over South Africa, but it only affects people the way it affects them, and it is given attention according to where it is affecting people at. Oliver, the apartheid was denounced by even the United Nations as a crime against humanity. What about it is extortion that is allowing people to close businesses, and a lot of people are losing jobs and a lot of people are dying? Where is the intervention of the soldiers from the Ramaphosa as the head of state? Because Olomisa said only if Ramaphosa sees the need for soldiers to intervene, he will allow them. Thanks.
Morning, Oliver and listeners. On this issue of domestic workers, I don't know if I'm correct or not, but my view is that the government has made things very difficult now for our people who used to work as domestic workers. Because what is happening now, most of the homes that I've seen around is people who works with transport. Most people now, especially in the white suburbs, they are hiring these illegal immigrants because it's cheap labor and there are no laws to enforce and they can pay them whatever. How is the government going to correct that? Because a lot of our people are not working, they are sitting home, they no longer have those domestic jobs.
And that brings me to the end of the program today. Thank you so much for tuning in, for bearing my terrible voice. My goodness, this was painful. This really was painful. I'm not going to be in tomorrow, that's for sure. I'm going to go rest my voice, medicate and rest my body as well. So I'll be back with you on Monday. I'm very hungry right now, so I'm going to go eat ribs. I'm not going to say where I'm going to have ribs.
You sound like you've got a lot going on, Oliver. No voice, but at least the ribs will make up for not feeling great.
Yeah, where do you find the best ribs in South Africa?
I've got no idea. I won't even lie.
You don't eat ribs?
No, every once in a while, but I don't go out of the house and say, today I'm going to buy ribs. Hardly ever happens.
I'll tell you next week when you can get some nice ribs.
The best ribs in Joburg, though, are the ones from Alex. There's a car wash place in Alex. They used to sell the best ribs.
So I get ribs from, there's a taxi rank in Randburg, the Randburg taxi rank. There's a guy there with chicken feet and he does ribs as well.
Oh,
that's
wow.
where I get it from. Somebody said The Rock at Kailami.
I've never been.
I've never been either. I'm gonna try that out as well. Thank you so much for myself and the team. It's goodbye for now. Kathy's up next.
All right, feel better soon, Oliver. Essential cover from our insurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS car to 43187 now.
Top stories for this hour. A new witness in the VIP Protection Unit case to take the stand and expelled MK members to hold a media briefing. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. A new witness is expected to take the stand when the case of 8 officers of the former VIP Presidential Protection Unit resumes in the Randburg Magistrate Court in Johannesburg this morning. The unit belongs to the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. The third witness is the owner of the car, which the accused allegedly blocked on the N1 highway in July last year. The witness testified yesterday that the vehicle was in poor condition. The 8 accused are facing various charges, including reckless and negligent driving, pointing a firearm, malicious damage to property, and assault. The former MK Party Student Command leader and MP Tami Kuzayo says he will continue to support the party despite his expulsion from it. He is among the 10 MK Party members that have been booted out and removed from their positions as MPs. The Western Cape High Court yesterday postponed the matter to the 3rd of next month, which they are seeking reinstatement. The expelled MPs are set to host a media briefing later today. Kuzayo says rogue elements in the party are behind the expulsion.
I will continue to support Mkondo because I know that it's not the entire organization that orchestrated this entire thing. It's some individuals within the organization whose agenda is unknown to me, but it's not something that I think the president would actually support. So there are people who are enjoying close proximity to the president, and they are doing some other things without his knowledge. I'm using his name. I've always said that they use his name to say he has agreed to this, has agreed to that, because they know rather that we'll never be able to get to him.
Kuzayo adds there